The text message wasn't meant for him. That's what Caleb Hayes kept telling himself as he stared at the screen at 2 in the morning, his daughter asleep in the next room, the rent notice still sitting unopened on the counter. A stranger was begging him for $40 to buy formula for her baby. He had $63 in his account. Rent was due in 5 days. He should have deleted it. Should have gone back to sleep. Instead, he did the stupidest thing he'd ever done. He sent the money. What happened next would crack open both their lives in ways neither of them saw coming. If you want to see how a wrong number becomes the right choice, stay until the end. And drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's get into it. The apartment smelled like burnt coffee and something Caleb couldn't quite place. Maybe defeat, maybe just Thursday. He sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open, the screen casting blue light across his face, while Brooklyn slept in the bedroom down the hall. 3 freelance invoices. 2 of them overdue, one of them probably never coming. He rubbed his eyes and checked his phone again. 2:17 a.m. The notification was still there. Please. I know this is crazy, but I'm desperate. My baby needs formula and I don't get paid until Monday. Can you send $40? I'll pay you back, I swear. Please. Wrong number. Had to be. Nobody he knew would text him asking for money, mostly because everyone he knew was just as broke as he was. Caleb set the phone down and tried to focus on the invoice he was drafting. Website redesign for a boutique law firm that kept changing their minds about fonts. He'd quoted them 1,200. They'd talked him down to 9. Now they wanted revisions that would take another 8 hours, and somehow that wasn't going to change the price. The phone buzzed again. I'm sorry. I know you don't know me. I'm out of options. He picked it up, stared at the number. Some part of him knew he should block it, delete the thread, go to bed. But there was something about the message, the way it didn't try to manipulate, didn't make excuses, just stated the facts and left it there. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. Brooklyn had been 6 months old when Sarah left. Just walked out one morning while Caleb was at work. Left a note on the counter that said she couldn't do it anymore. No explanation, no forwarding address. He'd come home to find Brooklyn screaming in her crib, diaper unchanged since that morning, bottle empty. That was 4 years ago. He knew what desperation looked like. Knew what it felt like to stand in a grocery store doing math in your head, trying to figure out if you could stretch another week on rice and eggs. Knew what it was like to hold a baby and realize you were the only thing standing between them and hunger. He opened his banking app. $63.18. Rent was $540. Due in 5 days. He had $200 saved. Another invoice that might clear by Monday if he was lucky. The law firm owed him $450, but who knew when they'd actually pay? $40 wouldn't make or break him, but it wouldn't save him either. He typed out a response before he could change his mind. What's your Venmo? The reply came fast. Are you serious? Yeah, but I can only do 40, and I can't promise when I'll need it back. Thank you. Oh my God, thank you. At Ava Reynolds 773. He sent the money. Watched his balance drop to $23.18. Then he closed the app, shut his laptop, and went to bed feeling like either the biggest idiot or the only sane person left in Charlotte. Brooklyn woke him at 6:30, climbing onto his bed with her stuffed elephant and poking his shoulder. Daddy, I'm hungry. Caleb groaned and pulled her into a hug, buying himself another 30 seconds of lying down. She smelled like the strawberry shampoo they got from the dollar store, and something uniquely kid, that mixture of sleep and innocence that made everything hurt a little less. What do you want for breakfast, Bug? Pancakes? We don't have pancake mix. Then cereal. We don't have cereal either. Brooklyn pulled back and looked at him with those enormous brown eyes that were all Sarah, even though Sarah didn't deserve them. Then what do we have? Eggs, toast, maybe some yogurt that's not expired yet. Eggs are gross. Eggs are protein. You always say that because it's always true. She sighed dramatically and rolled off the bed, dragging her elephant behind her. Caleb watched her go, that familiar weight settling in his chest. 4 years old and already too smart for her own good. Already starting to notice that their apartment was smaller than her friend Mia's, that other kids got new toys and she got trips to Goodwill. He got up, pulled on the same jeans he'd worn yesterday, and followed her to the kitchen. The rent notice was still on the counter. He flipped it face down and started making eggs. His phone buzzed while he was plating breakfast. Different number this time. "Hi, this is Ava, the person you helped last night. I wanted to say thank you properly, and I want to pay you back as soon as I can. Is there any way we could meet? I'd feel better doing it in person." Caleb stared at the message. Every instinct told him to say no. He didn't know this person, didn't need to know them. The $40 was gone. Writing it off was easier than getting tangled up in someone else's problems. Brooklyn was already eating, egg yolk on her chin, humming something she'd learned at preschool. He typed back, "You don't have to pay me back. It's fine." The response came immediately. "It's not fine, please. Just coffee. 15 minutes. I need to do this." There was something in the message that got him. That same stripped-down honesty from the night before. No performance. No bullshit. Okay. When? They met at a place called June's on Saturday afternoon. Caleb had never been inside, but he walked past it sometimes when he took Brooklyn to the playground. Small place, older crowd, the kind of coffee shop that served actual food instead of just pastries that cost $8. Brooklyn was with his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, for the afternoon, 70-year-old woman who watched her sometimes in exchange for Caleb fixing things around her apartment. Good deal for both of them, even if it meant he spent his weekends replacing faucets and patching drywall. He got there early, ordered a black coffee because it was the cheapest thing on the menu, and sat by the window. She walked in at exactly 2 o'clock. He knew it was her before she even looked around. Something about the way she carried herself, like she was braced for impact. She had a toddler on her hip, maybe 18 months old, wearing a shirt with a dinosaur on it. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail that had started to come loose, and she looked exhausted in a way that went deeper than just lack of sleep. Their eyes met. She walked over. "Caleb?" He stood up. "Yeah." "Ava?" She nodded and shifted the kid to her other hip. "This is Mason." "Hey, Mason." Caleb gave the kid a little wave. Mason stared at him with huge eyes and stuck his thumb in his mouth. "Do you want to sit? I can get you something." "I'm fine." But she sat anyway, settling Mason on her lap. The kid immediately started grabbing for the sugar packets in the little container on the table. They looked at each other for a second. Caleb could see her taking him in, the worn flannel, the tired eyes, the general aura of someone barely holding it together. He figured he was doing the same to her. "So," she said finally, "thank you for last night. You have no idea what that meant." "It's really okay. You don't have to." "I do." She reached into her bag, pulled out 2 20s, and set them on the table. "I got paid this morning." Caleb looked at the money, looked at her. "You have a kid. Keep it. We had a deal." "We had a desperate text message at 2 in the morning. That's not a deal." Something flickered across her face, not quite a smile, but close. "You always this stubborn? You always this insistent on paying back strangers?" "Only when the stranger saves my ass." Mason grabbed one of the 20s and crumpled it in his fist. Ava gently extracted it and smoothed it out on the table. "Look," Caleb said, "I get it. Pride, independence, all that. But I also get being a single parent and counting every dollar. So unless you're secretly rich and this is some kind of test, I'm telling you, keep the money." She went still. "How did you know I'm single?" "You texted a random number at 2 a.m. asking for formula money. Either you're single or your partner's useless. And if they're useless, you're functionally single anyway." That got a real smile. Small, but real. "Fair. So which is it?" "The first one. His dad's been out of the picture since I was pregnant." "That makes 2 of us." "Well, not pregnant, but the out of the picture part." "How old's your kid?" 4. Brooklyn. "She's with a neighbor right now, or she'd be climbing the walls in here." Ava nodded slowly. Mason had moved on from the sugar packets and was now trying to grab Caleb's coffee cup. Ava intercepted his hand and redirected him toward a plastic toy from her bag. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure." "Why did you send the money? You didn't know me. It could have been a scam." Caleb wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. It had gone lukewarm, but he didn't care. "Because I know what it's like. Not having enough. Making choices between things that shouldn't be choices. And because I figured $40 might ruin my week, but it wouldn't ruin my life. But it might save yours. She didn't say anything for a long moment, just looked at him like she was trying to figure out if he was real. Well, she said finally, it did. Save it, I mean. So thank you. You're welcome. They sat there in a silence that wasn't quite comfortable, but wasn't uncomfortable either. Mason babbled something and reached for Ava's face. She caught his hand and kissed it. I should go, she said. I just wanted to meet you and give you this. She pushed the money across the table again. Caleb didn't touch it. Tell you what, you want to pay me back? Buy yourself something, take Mason somewhere. Do something that's not just surviving. That's not how debts work. Good thing this isn't a debt then. She studied him for another second, then scooped up the money and put it back in her bag. You're weird. You know that? I've been told. She stood up, adjusting Mason on her hip. He immediately lunged for the table again, but she caught him. Well, thanks again for being weird. Anytime. She was halfway to the door when she turned back. Hey, if you ever need help with something, I don't know what, but something, let me know. I'm good at organizing things, details, that kind of stuff. Caleb felt something shift in his chest. Not quite hope, but adjacent to it. Yeah? Yeah, I mean, I owe you. Even if you're too stubborn to admit it. He found himself smiling. I'll keep that in mind. She left. He sat there for another 10 minutes, staring at his cold coffee and trying to figure out what the hell just happened. He didn't text her for 3 days, not because he didn't want to, though he wasn't entirely sure he did, more because he didn't know what to say. Hey, stranger I gave money to, want to hang out? Felt insane. Thanks for offering to help, but I'm fine, felt like a lie. So he did nothing, which was usually his default anyway. Then the law firm came back with another revision request. We're thinking the whole color scheme might be too warm. Can you redo it in cooler tones, blues, grays, that kind of thing? Same deadline, though. Caleb read the email 3 times, each time getting angrier. He'd already done 2 rounds of revisions, already cut his rate, already stayed up until 3 a.m. 2 nights in a row getting their urgent changes done. He opened a reply, typed out exactly what he thought of their timeline and their budget and their apparently bottomless capacity for changing their minds, then deleted it and closed his laptop. Brooklyn was at preschool. The apartment was quiet. He had 4 hours to either finish this job or tell them to fuck off and lose the money entirely. His phone was in his hand before he'd fully decided to pick it up. Hey, this is Caleb. From the coffee shop. You said you were good at organizing. Any chance you're free today? The reply came 20 minutes later. Yeah, Mason's at daycare until 4. What do you need? Client who keeps changing their mind and I'm about to lose it. Need someone to help me see if I'm crazy or if they're being unreasonable. Address? He sent it. Then spent the next 30 minutes trying to make the apartment look less like a disaster zone. Failed, but at least the dishes were done. She showed up at noon with a notebook and a determined expression. Okay, she said, stepping inside and looking around with the kind of quick assessment that suggested she'd been in worse places. Show me what you're working with. 2 hours later, they had a system. Ava had gone through every email, every revision request, every scope change, and created a document that laid out exactly what the law firm had asked for, what Caleb had delivered, and what they were now asking for on top of that. She'd calculated hours, compared it to the original quote, even found the part in the contract where it specified that major scope changes would require renegotiation. You're getting screwed, she said, sliding the laptop back to him. They've added at least 20 hours of work and haven't paid you a cent more. Caleb looked at the document, looked at her. How did you do this so fast? I was a project coordinator before Mason was born. This is what I did. Kept track of who promised what and when. Made sure nobody got away with scope creep. Why'd you stop? Her expression shuddered slightly. Daycare costs more than I was making, and my boss wasn't exactly understanding about the whole single mom thing, so I've been doing gig work, delivery apps mostly. Pays like shit, but at least it's flexible. Caleb scrolled through the document again. It was clearer than anything he'd ever put together. Professional. Airtight. This is incredible, he said. It's just organization. No, it's leverage. He looked at her. Can I send this to them? That's why I made it. He drafted an email right there, attaching her document, politely but firmly explaining that the requested changes constituted a significant scope increase and would require either additional compensation or a timeline extension. Ava read over his shoulder, suggested a few tweaks to the wording, and nodded when he hit send. Now what? He asked. Now you wait. And if they push back, you walk. Because you're worth more than they're paying you. Something in the way she said it made him think she wasn't just talking about the job. Thank you, he said. Seriously, I would have just done the work and hated myself. That's what they count on. She closed her notebook. People who need the money are easier to push around. Speaking from experience? Always. His phone buzzed. Both of them looked at it. The law firm had responded. You're right. We got carried away. We can extend the deadline to next Friday and add $300 to the invoice. Does that work? Caleb stared at the screen. $300. That plus the original $900 meant he could make rent with something left over. Holy shit, he said. Ava grinned. Told you. People respond to documentation. I need to hire you. It came out before he'd thought it through. But as soon as he said it, he realized he meant it. She blinked. What? I'm serious. I get clients like this all the time. People who don't respect timelines or budgets or the fact that I'm a human being with bills. If you could do this for all of them, just keep track of everything, hold people accountable, I'd actually make a living. Caleb, I don't even know your business. You don't need to. You just did in 2 hours what I've been failing to do for 2 years. She was quiet for a moment, turning it over. What would you pay? Honestly, I don't know yet. But a percentage of whatever I make. So if you help me get more money, you get more money. If I'm barely scraping by, we're both barely scraping by. That's a terrible pitch. I know, but it's honest. She laughed. Actually laughed. It changed her whole face. Okay, let me think about it. Fair. She stood to leave, slinging her bag over her shoulder. I need to get Mason, but send me your client list and your typical rates. Let me see what we're working with. You're actually considering this. I'm actually broke and tired of driving around delivering takeout to people who don't tip. So, yeah, I'm considering it. She left. The apartment felt different after she was gone, less heavy somehow. Caleb pulled up his client list and started putting together a spreadsheet. For the first time in months, he felt something that might have been optimism. He knew better than to trust it, but he let himself feel it anyway. They started small. Ava came over twice a week, Monday and Thursday afternoons when Mason was at daycare and Brooklyn was at preschool. She'd bring her laptop and that same notebook, and they'd go through his projects one by one. She set up a real invoicing system, created templates for contracts, started tracking hours in a way that made sense. Within 2 weeks, she'd gotten him paid for 3 jobs that had been dragging for months. Within 4 weeks, she'd negotiated a rate increase with 2 of his regular clients. Caleb started paying her 15% of everything that came in. Some weeks that was $60. Some weeks it was $200. But it was consistent, which was more than either of them had in a long time. They fell into a rhythm. He'd work on the creative side, design, development, client calls. She'd handle everything else. Scheduling, invoicing, follow-ups, the 1,000 tiny administrative tasks that Caleb had always been terrible at. It shouldn't have worked. They barely knew each other. But somehow it did. Brooklyn noticed the change first. Daddy, you're smiling. It was a Thursday evening. Caleb was making dinner, actual dinner, not just scrambled eggs, and Brooklyn was sitting at the table coloring. I smile, he said. Not like that. You look happy. I am happy. Because of Ava? He turned to look at her. What? Mrs. Chen says you have a work friend now. Is that Ava? Yeah, Ava helps me with work stuff. Is she nice? Very nice. Does she have kids? She has a son, Mason. He's younger than you. Brooklyn considered this, coloring carefully inside the lines of whatever she was drawing. Can I meet them? Maybe sometime. Okay. She went back to coloring, apparently satisfied. Caleb turned back to the stove, something warm and unfamiliar settling in his chest. He'd been so focused on keeping Brooklyn fed and safe and housed that he'd forgotten she might notice when things got better, might see the difference between surviving and actually living. His phone buzzed. Payment came through from the law firm. $1,247 total. Your cut is $1,059.95. Mine is $187.05. I'll Venmo you tomorrow. He typed back. You know you can just round up to $200 for yourself, right? Math is math. You're ridiculous. You're welcome. He found himself grinning at his phone like an idiot. Brooklyn was watching him. That's the happy smile again, she said. Finish your picture, bug. It happened on a Monday. Ava showed up at the apartment and Caleb knew immediately something was wrong. She was moving differently, faster, more agitated. Hey, he said, stepping aside to let her in. You okay? Fine. Just a long morning. But her hands were shaking slightly as she pulled out her laptop. They worked for about 20 minutes before she finally broke. The daycare's raising their rates, she said, not looking at him. Starting next month. Another $150 a week. Caleb set down his coffee. Jesus. Yeah. She laughed, but there was nothing funny in it. So that's an extra $600 a month, which is basically what I'm making from this, plus the delivery app stuff. Ava, it's fine. I'll figure it out. I always do. But her voice cracked on the last word. He watched her try to pull herself together, watched her fail. I'm sorry, she said, wiping at her eyes angrily. This is unprofessional. I shouldn't… Stop. He moved his chair closer. It's not unprofessional. It's life. And life is shit sometimes. She laughed again, wet and broken. You can say that twice. What if we brought Mason here? She looked up. What? During the days you work with me. Brooklyn's at preschool, but that's only until 1. After that, Mrs. Chen watches her. She could watch both of them. I pay her, but it's nothing like daycare rates. Caleb, I can't ask you to… You're not asking. I'm offering. 2 days a week, you bring Mason here. He hangs out. You work. Everybody wins. It's not a full solution, but it cuts your daycare bill almost in half. Ava stared at him. Why would you do that? Because we're partners. And because I know what it's like to calculate whether you can afford groceries. And because… He stopped, surprised by what he'd been about to say. Because what? Because you helped me when you didn't have to, so I'm helping you. That's how this works. She was quiet for a long time. Then, okay, yeah? Yeah, but I'm buying groceries for the days we're here. I'm not having Mason eat your food. Ava, that's the deal. Take it or leave it. He smiled. Deal. The first day Mason came over was chaos. The kid was into everything, pulled books off shelves, tried to climb on the furniture, stuck his hands in Brooklyn's toy bin, and threw plastic dinosaurs across the room. Mrs. Chen took it in stride, redirecting him calmly in Mandarin and English, but Caleb spent half the afternoon distracted by toddler shrieks coming from the living room. Ava was mortified. I'm so sorry, she kept saying. He's usually not this wild. He's 18 months old in a new place. This is exactly how he should be. By the time 4 o'clock rolled around, Mason had finally exhausted himself and was passed out on the couch with his thumb in his mouth. Brooklyn had claimed him as her new best friend and was showing Mrs. Chen pictures she'd drawn of my baby brother Mason. She knows he's not actually your kid, right? Ava asked, packing up her stuff. Probably, but she's 4. Reality is flexible. Ava looked at Mason, something soft crossing her face. He liked it here. I can tell. He's welcome any time. You say that now. I mean it. She met his eyes. They were standing close, closer than they usually did. Caleb could smell her shampoo, something floral and cheap and familiar in a way that made his chest hurt. Thank you, she said quietly. For all of this. You keep thanking me. I should be thanking you. We're up almost 30% from last month. That's just math. That's your math. I was drowning before you showed up. So was I. Something hung in the air between them, something unnamed but present. Caleb felt it settle against his ribs, warm and dangerous and utterly terrifying. Then Mason woke up crying, and the moment shattered. 6 weeks in, they had a routine. Mondays and Thursdays, Ava brought Mason over. She'd work while Caleb handled client calls and coding. Around 1, Brooklyn would come home from preschool, and Mrs. Chen would take over kid duty. The four of them, him, Ava, Brooklyn, Mason, would eat lunch together at the kitchen table. Nothing fancy, sandwiches mostly. Sometimes soup. But it felt like something. Brooklyn started talking about Mason like he was already part of the family. Asked when he was coming over. Saved toys for him. Drew him pictures. Caleb started looking forward to Mondays and Thursdays in a way that had nothing to do with work. Ava started staying later. Not for work. They'd usually wrap that up by 3. But she'd linger. Help with dinner. Sit on the couch while the kids played. Talk about nothing and everything. He learned that she'd grown up in foster care. Bounced around until she aged out at 18. Learned that Mason's father had been a guy she met at a party who'd seemed charming until the pregnancy test came back positive. Learned that she'd been on her own her entire life and didn't know any other way to be. She learned that Brooklyn's mother had left without a word. Learned that Caleb had dropped out of college when she was born because someone had to take care of her. Learned that he'd been freelancing ever since, barely keeping his head above water, convinced he was 1 bad month away from losing everything. They didn't talk about what they were doing, didn't label it, but it was there, growing between them like something planted in concrete, unlikely but undeniable. It fell apart on a Thursday. Caleb had been waiting on a big payment, $3,500 for a complete website overhaul. Client had promised it would clear by Wednesday. It was supposed to be the thing that got him ahead. Actually built up a savings account instead of just treading water. Wednesday came and went, no payment. Thursday morning, he got the email. Sorry for the delay. We've decided to go with another developer. We appreciate your initial work and will pay for the consultation hours, but we won't be needing the full build. Consultation hours. They were offering him $300. He'd already put in 40 hours. Ava was sitting across from him when he read it. She watched his face change. What happened? He slid the laptop toward her. She read the email, then read it again. They can't do this. They just did. No, look. She pulled up the contract. You have a termination clause. If they cancel after work has commenced, they owe you 50% of the total. Ava, they're not going to pay. You think I haven't dealt with this before? They'll drag it out, make it expensive to fight, and I'll end up with nothing anyway. So you're just going to take $300 for 40 hours of work? What choice do I have? You fight, you send them the contract. You explain what they owe, I can't afford to fight. It came out louder than he meant it to. I can't afford a lawyer. I can't afford to wait months for money I'm owed. I have rent due in a week, and Brooklyn needs new shoes, and I was counting on that $3,500 to actually breathe for once. So no, I'm not going to fight. I'm going to take the $300 and find another job and keep doing what I've always done, which is barely survive. Ava went very still. Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It's fine. She closed her laptop. I should go. Ava, I need to pick up Mason. She was already packing her bag, moving with quick mechanical efficiency. I'll Venmo you my percentage from the Brennan project. We should have that by tomorrow. You don't have to leave. I'm not leaving. I'm going to get my kid. But her voice was flat, distant. She was gone before he could figure out what to say. She didn't come by on Monday. Sent a text instead. Mason's sick. Can't make it. I'll catch up on invoices from home. Thursday. Still dealing with some stuff. I'll have the Henderson proposal to you by Friday. The following Monday. Can we push our meeting to next week? Things are complicated right now. Caleb knew what was happening. He'd done it himself enough times. The slow fade, the careful distance, the polite excuses that really meant I can't do this anymore. He should have let it go. Should have respected the boundary she was clearly setting. Instead, he showed up at her apartment on Tuesday afternoon with Brooklyn in tow. Ava's building was worse than his. Third-floor walk-up, paint peeling off the front door, the smell of mildew in the stairwell. He found her unit and knocked. She answered, looking exhausted. Mason was on her hip, red-faced and snotty. Caleb, what are you? We need to talk. Now's really not a good time. I know, I'm sorry, but I can't keep doing this. He gestured vaguely between them. Whatever this is, where you're shutting me out. I'm not shutting you out. I'm giving you space. I don't want space. I want... He stopped. Brooklyn was watching him with those two smart eyes. Can we come in? Just for a minute. Ava hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment was smaller than his. One bedroom, furniture that looked third-hand, but it was clean, organized. There were drawings on the fridge, toys in a neat bin by the couch. Brooklyn, honey, can you play with Mason for a minute? Ava set the toddler down. There's blocks in that bin. Brooklyn nodded seriously and led Mason to the toys. They settled into some complicated toddler game that involved knocking things over. Ava turned to Caleb. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me why you're pulling away. I'm not. Yes, you are. And I think I know why. Because I snapped at you. Because I gave up on that client instead of fighting. Because you saw me fold and now you think, what? That I'm weak? That I'm not worth working with? That's not it. Then what is it? She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was careful, controlled. I've been on my own since I was 18, Caleb, and I learned a long time ago that the only person who's going to save me is me. So when I saw you give up, when I watched you just take whatever scraps they offered because fighting felt too hard, it reminded me of every person who's ever let me down, every person who said they'd try and then didn't. I'm not them. How do I know that? We've known each other 2 months. Yeah, we work well together. Yeah, it's been nice, but nice doesn't pay rent. Nice doesn't keep the lights on. And I can't afford to depend on someone who's going to fold the second things get hard. You think I fold? I think you're tired. We both are. And tired people make bad choices. Caleb felt something crack open in his chest. You want to know why I didn't fight that client? It's not because I gave up. It's because I did the math. 300 now versus maybe 1750 in 6 months if I'm lucky. Brooklyn needs shoes today. She needs food tomorrow. I can't wait 6 months for justice. I have to survive right now. I know. And you know what the really fucked up part is? I was actually doing okay until that payment fell through. Because you helped me get organized. Because we were working together. Because for the first time in 4 years I felt like I wasn't drowning alone. Ava's expression shifted. Caleb, but the second I had a bad day, you disappeared. So who's really giving up here? The words hung between them. Brooklyn and Mason were playing some game that involved a lot of giggling. The sound felt surreal against the tension. You're right, Ava said finally. I did pull away because I got scared. Of what? Of this, of you, of the fact that I was starting to count on Mondays and Thursdays. That I was starting to think about what it would be like if this became something more than just work. She laughed, sharp and bitter. And then you had a crisis, and I realized how much power I'd given you. How much it would hurt if you left. So you left first. Yeah, I left first. She met his eyes. It's what I do. It's all I know how to do. Caleb moved closer. Not touching, but close. I'm not going anywhere. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise I'll try, and I can promise that when I have bad days, and I will have bad days, I'm not going to shut you out. I'm going to tell you what's wrong, and we'll figure it out together. Together is a fantasy, Caleb. People don't actually do that. Maybe the people you've known, but I'm asking you to try something different. She looked at him for a long time. He could see her weighing it, calculating the risk. What if it doesn't work, she said finally. Then it doesn't work, but at least we tried. I have a kid. I can't take risks with his stability. I have a kid too, and she's already asking when Mason's coming back, so we're already in this, whether we want to be or not. Ava glanced at Brooklyn and Mason. They'd abandoned the blocks and were now building some kind of fort out of couch cushions. They really do like each other, she said softly. Yeah, they really do. She turned back to him. Okay? Yeah? Yeah. But if you give up on me, if you walk away when things get hard, I'm not giving you a second chance. Same goes for you. Deal. They shook on it. Formal, ridiculous, perfect. Brooklyn looked up from the couch fort. Are you guys done talking? Because we made a castle and you have to see it. We're coming, Bug. The four of them spent the next hour in that tiny apartment, building cushion forts and eating crackers and pretending everything was simple. It wasn't. But maybe it could be. The next few weeks settled into something that felt almost normal. Ava came back to their Monday-Thursday routine, though Caleb could tell she was still testing the edges of it, still half expecting him to disappear. He didn't blame her. Trust wasn't something you built in a day, especially when you'd spent your whole life learning not to need anyone. The work picked up. Caleb landed a project redesigning a restaurant's online ordering system, $1,200 upfront, another $8 on completion. Then a small nonprofit needed a website overhaul. Then a buddy from his old college days referred him to a real estate agent who wanted something sleek and modern. Ava managed all of it, keeping the timeline straight, the invoices flowing, the clients from stepping all over him. By the end of March, Caleb had more money in his account than he'd seen in 2 years. Not rich person money, not even comfortable money, but enough that he could buy Brooklyn new shoes without checking his balance first. Enough that he slept a little easier. Ava's cut grew with it. She was making almost as much from their partnership as she was from the delivery apps, and she'd started talking about dropping some of those shifts. Caleb could see the exhaustion lifting from her shoulders, degree by degree. Could see her start to believe that maybe this thing they'd built might actually last. Brooklyn and Mason became inseparable on workdays. Mrs. Chen started calling them the twins, even though they looked nothing alike, and Mason was barely talking yet. Brooklyn had appointed herself his personal teacher, showing him how to stack blocks, how to color inside the lines, how to sing the alphabet song. Mason followed her around like she was the most fascinating person alive, which Brooklyn absolutely loved. "He's my responsibility," she told Caleb one night at dinner, her tone deadly serious. "Is that right?" "Yes, because he's little and I'm big, so I have to make sure he's okay." Caleb felt something twist in his chest. 4 years old and already understanding what it meant to take care of someone. He didn't know if that made him proud or sad. "You're a good friend to him, Bug." "I know." She took another bite of mac and cheese. "Daddy, can Ava and Mason come over on Saturday?" "It's not a work day, Brooklyn." "I know, but we could just hang out, like friends do." "I'll ask Ava." "Okay, but tell her we really want them to come." He did ask. That night, after Brooklyn was in bed, sitting on the couch with his phone in his hand and trying to figure out how to phrase it, they'd been careful about keeping things professional, even as the line between work and friendship blurred. But Brooklyn was right. They were friends now. More than that, maybe, though neither of them had said it out loud. He typed it out 3 different ways before settling on, "Brooklyn wants to know if you and Mason want to come over Saturday. No work, just hanging out. No pressure if that's weird." Ava's response came 10 minutes later. "Mason's been asking about Brooklyn too." "What time?" "Whenever works for you." 10? Perfect. He set the phone down and sat there in the dark apartment, trying to name what he was feeling. It wasn't quite happiness. That felt too big, too fragile. But it was adjacent to it, close enough to make him nervous. Saturday morning came with the kind of bright April weather that made Charlotte almost pretty. Caleb cleaned the apartment, which mostly meant shoving things into closets and hoping nobody looked too closely. Brooklyn helped by arranging her toys in elaborate patterns that she insisted were decorations. "It has to be perfect," she said, moving a plastic dinosaur 2 inches to the left. "They've been here before, Bug. They know what the place looks like." "But this is different. This is a play date." "You know Ava's a grown-up, right? Grown-ups don't have play dates." Brooklyn gave him a look that suggested she thought he was being deliberately dense. "Everyone has play dates, Daddy. That's just called hanging out." He couldn't really argue with that. They showed up at 10:15 and Ava was carrying Mason on one hip and a bag that looked heavy enough to contain supplies for a week-long expedition. "Sorry we're late. Someone decided to have a meltdown about wearing shoes." Mason, now wearing tiny sneakers with dinosaurs on them, looked completely unbothered by this characterization. "Brooklyn did that phase too," Caleb said, stepping aside to let them in. "For like 6 months, she only wore her rain boots, even in summer." "I liked them," Brooklyn said defensively. "They were yellow." "They were very yellow," Caleb confirmed. Mason squirmed until Ava set him down, then immediately toddled over to Brooklyn. She grabbed his hand like they were about to embark on a great adventure. "Come on, Mason, I'll show you my room." They disappeared down the hall, leaving Caleb and Ava standing in the living room. "So," Ava said. "So, this is weird, right? Like, good weird, but weird?" "Extremely weird." She laughed and set the bag down. "I brought snacks. Because apparently I can't show up anywhere without bringing food. It's like a compulsion. What kind of snacks? Goldfish, apple slices, some of those pouches that are supposedly fruit but taste like candy. Brooklyn will lose her mind over those pouches. Good. Mason's already had his allotment for the day, so she can have them all. They migrated to the kitchen, which was where all important conversations seemed to happen. Caleb made coffee. Ava unpacked the snacks and arranged them on plates like she'd done it 100 times before. You didn't have to do all this, Caleb said. I know, but I wanted to contribute something. Old habit, I guess. From foster care? She nodded, not quite meeting his eyes. You learn pretty quick that if you don't bring something to the table, people stop inviting you. So I always brought something, even if it was just, I don't know, being useful, being quiet, not taking up too much space. Caleb set down the coffee pot. You know you don't have to do that here, right? You could show up empty-handed and demanding and taking up all the space in the world, and we'd still want you here. I'm working on believing that. Take your time. Shrieks of laughter erupted from Brooklyn's room. They both turned toward the sound. Should we check on them? Ava asked. Probably, but let's give it another minute. If nobody's crying, they're fine. They stood there drinking coffee, listening to the kids play, and Caleb thought about how strange it was that this felt so natural. 2 months ago, Ava had been a wrong number. Now she was standing in his kitchen like she belonged there, and he couldn't imagine the space without her. Can I ask you something? He said. Sure. Well, what made you text me that night? Like, how did you even get my number? Ava's face did something complicated. I was trying to text someone from this mom group I'm in. We talked about helping each other out in emergencies. I must have mistyped the number. By the time I realized it wasn't her, you'd already responded. You almost deleted it, didn't you? How'd you know? Because I almost didn't respond, sat there for like 10 minutes trying to talk myself out of it. What changed your mind? He thought about that, about the desperation in her message, about Brooklyn sleeping in the next room, about knowing exactly what it felt like to be out of options. I guess I figured if I was in your position, I'd want someone to take the chance. That's a really trusting worldview for someone who's been screwed over as much as you have. Who says I'm trusting? Maybe I'm just stupid. You're not stupid. You sure about that? I give money to strangers and let random people reorganize my business. Random people who increased your income by 40%. Fair point. Brooklyn appeared in the doorway, Mason trailing behind her. We're hungry. You just had breakfast 2 hours ago. That was old hunger. This is new hunger. Ava covered her mouth to hide a laugh. Caleb pulled out the snacks she'd brought and arranged them on the coffee table. The kids descended like tiny locusts, grabbing handfuls of goldfish and apple slices with the kind of focused intensity usually reserved for actual emergencies. So, what do you want to do today? Caleb asked. Brooklyn looked up, cheeks full of goldfish. Playground. It's kind of cold out. It's sunny. Sunny and cold aren't mutually exclusive. I don't know what that means, but I still want to go to the playground. Caleb looked at Ava. She shrugged. I'm game if you are. 20 minutes later, they were at the small park 3 blocks from Caleb's apartment. It wasn't much. A rusty swing set, a slide that had seen better days, and a sandbox that definitely housed more cat shit than any parent wanted to think about. But the kids loved it. Brooklyn raced toward the swings with Mason toddling after her as fast as his little legs could carry him. Be careful, Ava called after them reflexively. They're fine, Caleb said. Brooklyn knows the rules. What rules? Don't eat the sand. Don't push other kids. If someone's being mean, come get me instead of hitting them. Those are good rules. Learned them the hard way. They sat on the bench at the edge of the playground, close enough to supervise but far enough to give the kids space. The sun was warm on Caleb's face, even though the air had that bite that meant winter wasn't quite done yet. This is nice, Ava said quietly. Yeah? Yeah, I don't do this enough. Just sit. Watch Mason play without worrying about what needs to happen next. You're always worrying about what's next. Survival trait, hard to turn off. I get that. They watched Brooklyn help Mason onto the slide. He was too small to climb the ladder himself, so she basically carried him up, step by step, with the kind of determined care that made Caleb's throat tight. She's really good with him, Ava said. She's good with everyone. Gets that from her mom, probably. Before Sarah left, she was... He stopped. They didn't talk about Sarah much. Didn't talk about Mason's dad at all. It felt like an unspoken rule. She was what? Ava prompted gently. Warm. People liked her. She could walk into a room and make everyone feel like they mattered. I always envied that. So what happened? Caleb watched Mason go down the slide, shrieking with delight. I don't know. She just woke up one day and decided she didn't want this life anymore. The baby, the struggling, the tiny apartment. Me. She didn't want any of it. Did she say that? Didn't have to. She left a note that said, I can't do this anymore. And that was it. Never came back. I tried calling, texting, nothing. It's like she just erased us. Ava was quiet for a moment. Do you miss her? No, I did at first, but mostly I was just angry. Still am, if I'm honest. Not for leaving me, but for leaving Brooklyn. Kid didn't ask for any of this. None of us did. Yeah. Brooklyn was showing Mason how to pump his legs on the swing now, even though he was way too little to actually swing by himself. She'd push him gently, then run around to the front and clap like he'd just performed a miracle. What about you? Caleb asked. You ever hear from Mason's dad? Nope. He blocked me when I told him I was pregnant. Classy, right? Did you want him to be involved? Not really. Maybe at first. But once I realized what kind of person he was, someone who'd just disappear when things got complicated, I figured Mason was better off without him. You're probably right. I know I'm right. I spent enough time in the system watching kids wait for parents who were never coming back. I won't do that to Mason. Won't let him hope for something that's never going to happen. There was something fierce in her voice, protective. Caleb understood it completely. He's lucky to have you, he said. We'll see. Ask me again in 10 years when he's in therapy complaining about his childhood. If that's your bar for success, I'm already failing. She laughed. Actually laughed. It changed her whole face, made her look younger. We're all failing. That's what parenting is, strategic failure management. That should be on a bumper sticker. Right next to, my kid learned sarcasm from me and I'm not sorry. Mason fell off the swing. Not hard. He basically just slid off the seat and landed on his butt in the mulch. But he immediately started crying, that heartbroken wail that only toddlers can produce. Ava was up and moving before Caleb could blink. She scooped Mason up, checked him for injuries, brushed the mulch off his pants. You're okay, baby. You're okay. Just a little tumble. Mason buried his face in her shoulder, still crying but already starting to wind down. Brooklyn had abandoned the swings and was hovering anxiously nearby. Is he hurt? He's fine, Ava assured her. Just scared. I didn't push him too hard, did I? No, honey. You were being very gentle. He just lost his balance. Brooklyn looked relieved. She patted Mason's back with one small hand. It's okay, Mason. Falling happens sometimes. You're very brave. Mason lifted his head, snot running down his face, and reached for Brooklyn. Ava carefully transferred him over, and Brooklyn staggered under his weight, but held on. I got you, she told him seriously. You're safe. Caleb felt something crack open in his chest. Ava met his eyes over the kids' heads, and he could see she was feeling it too. That terrifying, wonderful realization that this thing between them had stopped being just about survival and started being about something else entirely. They stayed at the playground for another hour. By the time they headed back to the apartment, both kids were exhausted and whiny. Mason fell asleep in Ava's arms halfway home. Brooklyn was dragging her feet, complaining that her legs were tired. Want me to carry you? Caleb offered. I'm too big for that. You're 4. That's basically grown up. Right. My mistake. She made it another half block before giving up and raising her arms. Caleb scooped her up. She immediately went boneless against his shoulder, that complete trust that kids had before the world taught them not to. They must have looked ridiculous. 2 adults carrying sleeping kids through Charlotte on a Saturday afternoon, Ava's bag of snacks bouncing against her hip, all of them tired and windblown and probably smelling like playground. But Caleb didn't care. For the first time in years, he felt like he was part of something, not just surviving, actually living. Back at the apartment, they tried to transfer the kids to the couch without waking them. Mason stayed asleep. Brooklyn's eyes fluttered open long enough to mumble, "I'm not tired," before she was out again. Caleb and Ava stood in the kitchen, watching the kids sleep, not quite sure what to do with themselves. I should probably go, Ava said, but she didn't move. You could stay. I mean, until they wake up. Seems cruel to wake Mason now. Yeah, okay. They settled on opposite ends of the couch, careful not to disturb the sleeping children between them. The afternoon light was slanting through the windows, making everything soft and golden. Caleb's eyes felt heavy. This was a good day, Ava said quietly. Yeah. We should do it again sometime. Whenever you want. She smiled, and Caleb thought about how much he liked that smile, how much he wanted to keep seeing it. Caleb? Yeah? Thanks for all of this, for taking a chance on me. You took a chance on me first, showing up at that coffee shop, working with me even though you had no reason to trust I'd follow through. I guess we both took chances. I guess we did. Mason stirred in his sleep, making little snuffling noises. Ava reached over and brushed his hair back from his forehead with a gentleness that made Caleb's chest hurt. What are we doing here? She asked, still looking at Mason. What do you mean? This, us. Is this just work? Just friendship? Or is it… She stopped, started over. I need to know what this is, because I can't keep pretending it's casual when it doesn't feel casual anymore. Caleb's heart was beating too fast. What does it feel like to you? Like something I could lose, which means it matters, which scares the hell out of me. Yeah, me too. She finally looked at him. So what do we do about that? I don't know. I haven't done this since Brooklyn's mom. And look how that turned out. I haven't done this ever. Not really. A few guys here and there, but nothing that mattered. Nothing I'd call… She gestured vaguely between them. A thing? Is that what this is? A thing? Caleb thought about it. About Monday and Thursday afternoons. About the way Brooklyn's whole face lit up when Ava walked in. About how he'd started measuring his weeks in the time between seeing her. Yeah, he said. I think it might be. That's terrifying. Completely. We have kids. We can't screw this up. I know. And we work together. If this goes bad, it could ruin everything. Also true. So maybe we shouldn't… Ava. He waited until she looked at him. I don't know how to promise you this won't go bad. I can't predict the future, but I can tell you that I'm going to try, really try, and I think you will too. So maybe that's enough. She studied his face like she was looking for the lie. He let her look. Didn't try to hide anything. Okay, she said finally. Okay. Okay, let's try. But we go slow. And if it starts affecting the kids badly, we stop. Agreed. And we're honest. About everything. No shutting each other out when things get hard. Deal. They sat there looking at each other, the weight of what they'd just agreed to settling over them. Then Brooklyn shifted in her sleep and rolled into Mason, who woke up crying because someone was touching him. The moment shattered. Ava picked up Mason, bouncing him gently while he rubbed his eyes and whimpered. Brooklyn sat up, disoriented and cranky. What time is it? She mumbled. Almost 4, Caleb told her. Did I sleep a long time? Couple hours. She looked around, spotted Ava and Mason, and immediately perked up. You're still here. We are. Mason just woke up. Me too. Brooklyn slid off the couch and padded over to them. Hi, Mason. Did you have good dreams? Mason just buried his face in Ava's shoulder, still working on rejoining the world. I should really get him home, Ava said. It's almost dinner time and he gets mean when he's hungry. Don't we all? Caleb said, standing up. You want help getting your stuff to the car? I walked. Then let me drive you. It's getting cold out. Caleb, you don't have to… I know, but Brooklyn's already putting her shoes on, so you're outvoted. Sure enough, Brooklyn was by the door, shoving her feet into her sneakers with the kind of determination that suggested arguing was futile. They piled into Caleb's beat-up Honda, Ava in front with Mason in her lap since they didn't have a car seat, Brooklyn in the back narrating everything they passed like she was giving a tour of Charlotte. The drive to Ava's place took 12 minutes. Caleb pulled up in front of her building and put the car in park. Thanks for today, Ava said. Brooklyn, thank you for being such a good friend to Mason. You're welcome. Can we do it again next Saturday? Ava glanced at Caleb. He shrugged. I'm free if you are. Same time, she asked. Same time. She got out of the car, Mason still clinging to her. Brooklyn waved enthusiastically from the back seat. Bye, Mason. Bye. Ava, see you on Monday. Caleb watched them disappear into the building, then pulled away from the curb. Daddy? Yeah, Bug? I really like them. Me too. Is Ava your girlfriend now? Caleb nearly drove into a mailbox. What? You were holding hands when you thought I was asleep. We were not. He stopped. Thought back. They might have been. He honestly couldn't remember. It's okay if she is, Brooklyn continued. I think she's nice, and Mason's my favorite. I'm glad you like them. Do you like Ava the way grown-ups like each other? Like the special way? Brooklyn, you're 4. How do you even know about this stuff? Mia's mom has a boyfriend. Mia says they kiss and hold hands and go on dates. Is that what you and Ava are going to do? Caleb gripped the steering wheel and tried to figure out how to explain adult relationships to a preschooler when he barely understood them himself. I like Ava very much, he said carefully, and we're figuring out what that means. But it's going to be slow, and it's not going to change anything about you and me. You're still the most important person in my life. Always. I know, Daddy, but you can have more than one important person, like how I have you and Mrs. Chen, and now Mason and Ava. That's very wise, Bug. I know. She was quiet for a moment, then, if you marry Ava, will Mason be my brother? Nobody's getting married, Brooklyn. But if you did, then, yeah, I guess he would be. Good. I want a brother. Caleb pulled into their building's parking lot and killed the engine. Brooklyn was already unbuckling herself, ready to bounce back to their apartment like the conversation hadn't just fundamentally altered Caleb's entire understanding of what they were building. That night, after Brooklyn was in bed, Caleb sat on the couch with his phone in his hand. He typed out a message to Ava and deleted it 3 times before finally just sending, "Today was really good." Her response came 5 minutes later. Yeah, it really was. Same time next Saturday? It's a date. He stared at that last word. Date. They were dating now, apparently, or something close to it. The thought should have terrified him. And it did, a little. But underneath the fear was something else, something that felt suspiciously like hope. He set the phone down and let himself feel it. The next Monday, Ava showed up with Mason and a new kind of energy. Not nervous, exactly, but aware. Like they were both hyper-conscious of what they'd admitted on Saturday and weren't quite sure how to act around each other now. Hi, she said, standing in the doorway with Mason on her hip. Hi yourself. So, work? Work. Right, we should do that. They settled into their usual spots at the kitchen table, but everything felt different. Caleb kept catching himself watching her, the way she bit her lip when she was concentrating, the way she absently played with Mason's hair while she typed. A few times he looked up to find her watching him too. This is weird, she said finally. Super weird. We should probably talk about it. Probably. Neither of them moved. Mason was playing with blocks on the floor, completely oblivious to the tension in the room. I don't know how to do this, Ava admitted. The whole, whatever this is, dating, I guess, while also working together and being parents and trying not to screw everything up. I don't either, but I figure we make it up as we go. That's a terrible plan. You got a better one? She thought about it. No, making it up as we go sounds about right. They smiled at each other and something settled. Not all the way. There was still that awareness, that sense of standing on the edge of something, but enough that they could actually focus on work. The Henderson proposal took them 2 hours. After that, they reviewed invoices, scheduled follow-ups, planned out the next 2 weeks of projects. By the time Brooklyn got home from preschool, they'd fallen back into their rhythm. Different now, but still theirs, Mrs. Chen collected both kids and took them to her apartment, giving Caleb and Ava space to finish up. They were packing up their laptops when Ava's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and went pale. What's wrong? Caleb asked. It's the daycare. She answered it. Hello? Yes, this is Ava Reynolds. Caleb watched her face change as she listened, watched the color drain completely. Are you sure? There's no... Okay, I understand. I'll figure something out. Thank you for letting me know. She hung up, sat there staring at nothing. Ava, they're closing. The daycare, end of the month, some kind of licensing issue. They didn't go into detail, but basically they're done. Shit. Yeah. She laughed, but it was hollow. I have 2 weeks to find a new place for Mason, in Charlotte, where wait lists are 6 months minimum and deposits are more than I make in a month. What about bringing him here full time, not just Mondays and Thursdays, every day? Caleb, I can't ask you to. You're not asking, I'm offering. Mrs. Chen already watches both of them 2 days a week. We can figure out the other 3. Maybe split them. I'll take some days, you take some days. We make it work. That's insane. You can't just rearrange your whole life because my daycare fell through. Why not? You rearranged yours when my client bailed. This is what we do. We help each other. She looked at him for a long moment. This is happening really fast. I know. What if we're making a huge mistake? Then we make it together. Something in her expression cracked, not breaking, softening. Okay. Yeah? Yeah. But we're writing this down. Who has Mason, when, backup plans, emergency contacts, all of it. We're not winging childcare. Wouldn't dream of it. They spent the next hour creating a schedule. Caleb would take Mason Mondays and Wednesdays. Ava would rearrange her delivery shifts to cover Tuesdays and Fridays. Thursdays they'd trade off depending on who had more work. Mrs. Chen agreed to help on the days when both of them were slammed, though they tried to minimize that. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. This is actually happening, Ava said, looking at the schedule they'd built. Yeah. We're co-parenting, kind of. Kind of. That's a really big step for people who just agreed they were dating like 3 days ago. We've never done anything in the right order. Why start now? She laughed, and this time it was real. Fair point. They told the kids that night. Brooklyn was thrilled. Mason didn't fully understand, but seemed happy that Brooklyn was happy. Mrs. Chen just nodded like she'd seen this coming from a mile away. You take care of each other, she said to Caleb after Ava left. It's good. Everyone needs someone. Yeah, I'm starting to figure that out. The first week of the new arrangement was chaos. Mason had a meltdown on Tuesday because Ava wasn't there. Brooklyn got jealous on Wednesday because Caleb was paying too much attention to Mason. Schedules conflicted. Meals got burned. Someone was always crying about something, but they figured it out. Slowly, imperfectly, but they figured it out. By Friday, they had a rhythm, not smooth, but functional. And when Ava showed up that evening to pick up Mason, she looked different. Lighter, maybe. How'd it go? She asked. He threw a toy at my head, refused to eat anything except crackers, and told me no approximately 400 times. So a normal day with a toddler. Exactly. Caleb handed over Mason, who immediately curled into Ava's shoulder. But we survived. That's all we can ask for. She was about to leave when Caleb caught her hand. Hey, you want to get dinner sometime? Just us. No kids. Like a date? Yeah, like a date. She smiled. Okay. When? Saturday? We can do the playground thing in the morning, then Mrs. Chen can watch both of them for a few hours. You already asked her, didn't you? I might have mentioned it. You're very presumptuous. Is that a yes? That's a yes. Saturday came with rain. They skipped the playground and instead built a massive blanket fort in Caleb's living room, all 4 of them crammed inside with flashlights and snacks. Brooklyn appointed herself the fort queen. Mason was the royal guard. Caleb and Ava were apparently peasants who had to bring offerings of goldfish. This is very elaborate, Caleb whispered to Ava. She takes her role very seriously. Should we be concerned? Only if she starts demanding taxes. Mrs. Chen collected the kids at 5. Brooklyn gave Caleb a very knowing look on her way out the door. Have fun on your date, Daddy. We're just getting dinner. That's what a date is. He couldn't really argue with that. Ava had gone home to change. She showed up at 6 wearing jeans and a sweater that Caleb had never seen before, her hair down instead of pulled back. She looked nervous. Hi, she said. Hi. You look nice. Thanks. So do you. They stood there for a second, suddenly awkward. So where are we going? She asked. There's a Thai place about 10 minutes from here. Nothing fancy, but the food's good and it's quiet. Sounds perfect. The restaurant was exactly as advertised, small, warm, half empty on a Saturday evening. They got a table in the back, ordered too much food because neither of them could decide. Spent the first 10 minutes making small talk about work and kids and the weather. Then Ava set down her water glass and looked at him. Okay, this is ridiculous. We've spent almost every day together for 2 months. We're raising each other's kids. Why are we acting like strangers? Because it feels different now. Why? Because before, if this didn't work out, we could just stop working together. But now, he gestured vaguely. Now we're tangled up in each other's lives. If we screw this up, it affects Brooklyn and Mason. It affects our business. It affects everything. So you're saying the stakes are too high? I'm saying I'm terrified of losing this. Ava reached across the table and took his hand. Me too. But we can't let fear make our decisions. We'll just end up back where we started, alone and barely surviving. Is this your way of saying we should jump off the cliff? I think we already did. Now we just have to figure out how to land. The food came. They ate and talked about real things, childhood, dreams, all the ways they'd failed and kept going anyway. Ava told him about aging out of foster care at 18 with nothing but a garbage bag of clothes and $200. About sleeping in her car for 3 months while she saved up for a deposit on an apartment. About deciding to keep Mason even though everyone told her she couldn't afford it. Caleb told her about dropping out of college with $37 in his account and a 2-month-old baby. About the first year when he barely slept, working gigs during the day and staying up all night with Brooklyn. About the moment he realized Sarah wasn't coming back, and he was going to have to do this alone. We're kind of a mess, Ava said. Completely. But we're making it work. Yeah, we really are. They skipped dessert and drove back to his apartment. Mrs. Chen had both kids asleep on the couch, some animated movie playing quietly on the TV. They were very good, she reported. Ate dinner, played nice, went to sleep like angels. Thank you, Mrs. Chen, seriously. She just patted his arm and shuffled back to her own apartment. Caleb and Ava stood in the living room looking at their sleeping kids. I should get Mason home, Ava whispered, or you could stay, just until he wakes up, no pressure. She looked at him. Caleb, I know. I just like having you here. I like being here. They settled on the couch, careful not to wake the kids. Ava leaned into him, her head on his shoulder, and Caleb wrapped an arm around her. This is nice, she murmured. Yeah. Scary, but nice. Yeah. They sat like that for a long time, watching Brooklyn and Mason sleep, both of them thinking about all the ways this could go wrong, and choosing, for now, to focus on all the ways it might go right. The weeks after that first real date settled into something that felt dangerously close to normal. Caleb caught himself looking forward to Mondays and Thursdays with an intensity that should have scared him, but didn't. Ava would show up with Mason and that same worn laptop bag, and they'd fall into their routine like they'd been doing it for years instead of months. The business kept growing. Small projects turned into bigger ones. One-off clients became regulars. By the end of May, they'd brought in more money than Caleb had made in the previous 6 months combined. It still wasn't enough to feel comfortable, but it was enough to breathe. Ava started bringing ideas to the table that went beyond just organization. She noticed patterns in what clients asked for, suggested services they could offer, pushed Caleb to raise his rates because he was consistently undercharging. You're too nice, she told him one afternoon while they were reviewing a proposal. This website redesign? You quoted them $1,800. It should be at least $25. They'll go somewhere else. Let them. We don't need clients who don't value the work. That's easy to say when you're not the one who has to make rent. Caleb, we're both making rent now. Barely, but we are. So we can afford to be selective. He looked at the proposal again. She was right. The scope was bigger than he'd initially calculated. Okay, $2,500. Final offer. Thank you. Was that so hard? Physically painful, actually. She grinned and went back to typing. Caleb watched her for a moment, that familiar warmth spreading through his chest. He still wasn't used to having someone in his corner, someone who pushed him to be better instead of just accepting whatever he settled for. Brooklyn noticed the change too. She started talking about Ava and Mason like they were permanent fixtures, not just visitors. When are they coming over next? She asked, at breakfast one Tuesday. Thursday. That's forever. It's 2 days, Bug. Like I said, forever. She took another bite of cereal. Can Mason sleep over sometime? I don't know. That's something we'd have to ask Ava. Why don't you just ask her to move in? Then Mason would be here all the time. Caleb nearly choked on his coffee. Brooklyn, that's not how it works. Why not? You like her. She likes you. We all like each other. Mrs. Chen says that's what matters. Mrs. Chen needs to stop giving you relationship advice. She's very wise. She's very meddlesome. But Brooklyn's question stuck with him. The apartment did feel emptier on the days Ava wasn't there, and he'd caught himself imagining what it would be like to wake up with her there, to share morning coffee before the kids got up, to not have to coordinate schedules just to see each other. He pushed the thought away. Too fast. Too much. They were still figuring this out. Thursday came and Ava showed up looking stressed. Mason was fussy, whining and clinging to her leg while she tried to set up her laptop. Sorry, she said, bouncing him on her hip. He's been like this all morning. I think he's getting molars. You want me to take him? Let you work? Would you? I have 3 invoices that needed to go out yesterday, and I can't concentrate with him like this. Caleb took Mason, who immediately reached for his face with sticky toddler hands. Hey, buddy, you having a rough day? Mason just whimpered and stuck his thumb in his mouth. Come on, let's see if we can find something to distract you. He spent the next hour entertaining Mason with increasingly ridiculous tactics. Toys didn't work. Books got thrown. Eventually, Caleb just started making stupid faces and voices, which got a few reluctant giggles. Ava looked up from her laptop at one point, watched them for a moment, then smiled. You're good with him. I'm mostly just making an idiot of myself. That's 90% of parenting. The other 10? Hoping they turn out okay despite us. Mason finally crashed around noon, exhausted from his own tantrum. Caleb laid him on the couch with a blanket, and he was out immediately. Thank you, Ava said quietly. I couldn't have gotten those done with him like that. It's what we do, right? Tag team. Yeah. She closed her laptop. But still, thank you. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the only sound Mason's soft breathing and the occasional car passing outside. It felt domestic in a way that should have been terrifying but wasn't. Brooklyn got home from preschool at 1, full of energy and stories. She saw Mason asleep and immediately went into whisper mode, tiptoeing over to show Caleb a painting she'd made. It's our family, she said proudly. Caleb looked at the painting. 4 stick figures, 1 tall, 1 medium, 2 small. That's me, and you, and that's Ava and Mason. We're all together. See? I made us a house and everything. Ava had gone very still. Caleb looked at her, saw something complicated crossing her face. That's beautiful, Brooklyn, she said softly. You can have it if you want, for your apartment. I'd love that, thank you. Brooklyn beamed and carefully set the painting aside to dry. Then she went to play in her room, leaving the adults alone with the implications of what she'd just drawn. She thinks we're a family, Ava said. Yeah. Are we? Caleb thought about it. About Monday and Thursday afternoons. About splitting childcare and sharing meals and the way Mason had started calling him Cal because he couldn't quite manage the full name. About how Brooklyn lit up every time Ava walked in the door. I think maybe we are, he said. Not in any traditional way, but yeah, I think we might be. Ava nodded slowly. That's terrifying. Completely. But also kind of nice? Also that. She moved closer, took his hand. They sat like that for a while, not saying anything, just existing in the weight of what they were building. Mason woke up crying. The moment shattered, replaced by the immediate need to comfort a cranky toddler. But something had shifted. An acknowledgement that this thing between them had grown beyond just convenience or attraction into something that involved everyone. That night, after Ava and Mason left, Brooklyn brought it up again. So are we a family now? What makes you ask that, Bug? Because that's what it feels like when they're here, like we're all together. Caleb sat down next to her on the couch. Do you want us to be a family? Yeah, I like Ava. And Mason's fun even when he's being a baby about stuff. He is a baby. That's what I said. She looked at him seriously. Do you want us to be a family? I think so, yeah. Then we are. That's how it works, right? You just decide? It's a little more complicated than that. Why? If everyone wants it, why does it have to be complicated? Caleb didn't have a good answer for that. Out of the mouths of 4-year-olds, apparently. The next few weeks, things intensified. Not in a bad way, just in the way that happened when you stopped pretending something was casual and started treating it like it mattered. They spent more time together. Ava started keeping spare clothes at Caleb's apartment. He started knowing Mason's schedule as well as Brooklyn's. They had their first real fight in June. It was stupid, the kind of argument that wouldn't have meant anything if they weren't both exhausted and stressed. Caleb had forgotten to follow up with a client who needed revisions. Ava had reminded him twice, but it slipped his mind. The client got annoyed and threatened to take their business elsewhere. "How did you forget?" Ava asked, her voice tight with frustration. "I sent you 3 reminders. I put it on the calendar. I literally told you this morning. I had other things going on. Brooklyn had a doctor's appointment and Mason needed... Don't put this on the kids. You just didn't prioritize it." "I'm doing the best I can, Ava. I can't remember everything. That's literally my job, to help you remember everything. But I can't do it if you're not going to meet me halfway." I am meeting you halfway. I'm juggling a million things and sometimes one slips through. That's life." "No, that's carelessness. And it costs us clients. Costs us money we can't afford to lose." "You think I don't know that? You think I'm not aware every single day that we're one mistake away from falling apart?" She stopped, looked at him. "Is that what you think? That we're about to fall apart?" "I don't know, maybe. Everything good in my life eventually does." "So you're just waiting for it to happen with us?" "I'm not waiting for anything. I'm just being realistic." "No, you're being a coward. You're so convinced this won't last that you're not even trying to make it work." That hit harder than it should have. "That's not fair." "Isn't it? You forgot to follow up with the client because some part of you doesn't think this matters. Doesn't think we matter." "That's not true." "Then prove it. Stop treating this like it's temporary. Stop holding back like you're already halfway out the door." "I'm not..." He stopped. Was he? Was some part of him still protecting himself by not fully committing? "I can't do this if you're not all in," Ava said. Her voice was softer now, but there was steel underneath. "I won't be with someone who's already planning their exit strategy. I'm here, aren't I? Every day. Working with you, taking care of the kids, building this thing we're building. Your body's here. But are you actually here? Or are you just going through the motions until it inevitably falls apart?" He didn't have an answer. The silence stretched between them. "I need to go," Ava said finally. She started packing up her stuff. "Ava, wait. I can't. I need to think. And you need to figure out what you actually want. Because I can't keep doing this if you're not sure." She left with Mason, and the apartment felt too big and too quiet. Brooklyn came out of her room. "Why did Ava leave?" "We had a disagreement." "About what?" "Grown-up stuff." "Are you breaking up?" "No, I don't think so. We need some space." Brooklyn climbed onto the couch next to him. "You should say sorry." "It's more complicated than that, Bug." "Is it? You made her sad. You should say sorry and fix it." Again, with the 4-year-old wisdom that cut straight through the bullshit, Caleb spent that night thinking about what Ava had said, about whether he was really all in or just pretending to be, about what he actually wanted versus what he was too afraid to reach for. The truth was harder than he wanted to admit. He was scared. Scared of depending on someone. Scared of what would happen when they inevitably left. Sarah had left. His own parents had checked out emotionally long before he moved out. Everyone he'd ever trusted to stay had eventually gone. So yeah, maybe he was holding back. Maybe he was protecting himself by not fully believing this could work. But Ava was right. That wasn't fair to her. Wasn't fair to what they were building. He texted her the next morning. "You were right. I was holding back. Can we talk?" She didn't respond for 3 hours. When she did, it was just, "Okay, your place, 2 p.m. He spent the intervening time trying to figure out what to say. How to explain that he was terrified but wanted to try anyway. that she mattered more than his fear, but he didn't know how to turn off the part of him that was always waiting for disaster. She showed up at 2 exactly. No Mason this time. He was with a neighbor. This was just them. "Hi," he said. "Hi." They sat at the kitchen table, the same place they'd had 100 work conversations, but this felt different, heavier. "I'm sorry," Caleb said, "for forgetting to follow up with the client, for making you feel like this doesn't matter to me, for holding back." "Okay." "And you were right about the other stuff too. I was protecting myself. And protecting myself, honestly, because everyone I've ever counted on has left and I keep waiting for you to do the same. I'm not going to leave." "You can't promise that. Nobody can." "No. But I can promise I'm not planning to. I can promise that when things get hard, and they will get hard, I'm going to try to work through it instead of running. Can you promise that too?" Could he? Could he promise to stay even when it scared him? To fight for this instead of just waiting for it to end? "I want to," he said. "I want to be the kind of person who doesn't bail when things get complicated, but I don't know if I know how." "Then we learn together, both of us." "Because I'm scared too, Caleb. I'm terrified that I'm setting myself up to get hurt again, that I'm letting you and Brooklyn matter too much, and one day I'll wake up alone again. But I'm choosing to try anyway. I need you to choose that too." He looked at her across the table, saw the fear in her eyes that mirrored his own, saw her choosing to be here despite it. "Okay," he said. "I choose this. I choose you, even though it scares the hell out of me." "Same." "So what now?" "Now we try. Actually try. No more holding back. No more protecting ourselves. We go all in and see what happens." "That's a terrible plan. You have a better one?" "No." "Then that's what we're doing." She reached across the table. He took her hand. It felt like a promise and a risk all at once. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking, really talking, about their fears and their hopes and what they wanted this to become. It wasn't comfortable. Ava cried twice. Caleb almost walked away once because it was too much vulnerability at once. But they stayed, both of them. And by the time the sun started setting, something had shifted. "I should go get Mason," Ava said. "But can I come back? Later, after the kids are asleep?" "Yeah, I'd like that." She left. Came back 3 hours later with Mason already in his pajamas, half asleep on her shoulder. Brooklyn was already down for the night. They put Mason on the couch with blankets and pillows, and he didn't even stir. Then they sat together in the quiet apartment, just existing in each other's space. "This is nice," Ava said. "Yeah. Being here. With you, not having to leave." "You could stay," Caleb said. "Not forever. Not yet. But tonight. You could stay tonight." She looked at him. "You sure?" "Yeah, I'm sure." So she stayed. They fell asleep on Caleb's bed, fully clothed and careful not to wake the kids, and it was the most intimate thing they'd done yet. Just sleeping in the same space, trusting each other with that vulnerability. Caleb woke up at 6 to find Ava already awake, watching him. "That's creepy," he mumbled. "You snore." "I do not." "You absolutely do, like a chainsaw having an argument with itself." He laughed and pulled her closer. "Good morning to you too." "Morning." They could hear Mason stirring in the living room. Brooklyn would be up soon. The day was starting whether they were ready or not. "This is going to be complicated," Ava said. "Probably. We're going to fight sometimes, make mistakes, screw things up." "Almost definitely. But we're doing it anyway?" "Yeah, we're doing it anyway." Mason called for Ava. Brooklyn's door opened. The moment of peace shattered into the chaos of morning with 2 small kids. But as Caleb watched Ava comfort Mason and Brooklyn demand breakfast and the whole beautiful mess of it unfold, he thought maybe this was what choosing looked like. Not the absence of fear, but doing it anyway. Not waiting for perfection, but building something real. They made pancakes together. Burned the first batch. The second batch came out better. The kids ate them covered in syrup and got it everywhere. It was loud and messy and nothing like Caleb had imagined his life would look. It was better. Over the next month, they fell into a new rhythm. Ava and Mason started spending more nights at Caleb's place. Not every night. They both needed space sometimes. and Mason did better with consistency in his own environment, but enough that it started feeling like something permanent. The work continued to grow. They landed their biggest client yet in July, a tech startup that needed a complete brand overhaul, website, marketing materials, ongoing support. It was worth $20,000 over 6 months, more money than either of them had seen in years. "We should celebrate," Ava said when they got the confirmation email. "How?" "I don't know, dinner out with actual napkins. Fancy." "We earned it." They got Mrs. Chen to watch both kids and went to a restaurant that had tablecloths and a wine list. It felt surreal sitting across from each other in a place that didn't have chicken fingers on the menu. "I can't believe this is real," Ava said, looking at the contract on her phone for the 100th time. "It's real. $20,000. Over 6 months, so not all at once. Still, that's stability, that's breathing room, that's—" She stopped, her eyes getting wet. "Hey, you okay?" "Yeah, I've never had this before. Never had something that felt sustainable. It's overwhelming." "Good overwhelming?" "The best overwhelming." They ordered too much food and split a dessert and talked about everything except work. About Brooklyn's upcoming birthday. About whether Mason would ever stop putting things in his mouth. About nothing and everything. Walking back to the car, Ava grabbed his hand. "I love this," she said. "Being with you. Building something together. All of it." "Me too. Like really love it. Like love you love it." She'd said it before. In court. Under pressure. But this was different. Calmer. More certain. "I love you too," Caleb said. "Just so we're clear." Very clear. They picked up the kids from Mrs. Chen's. Both of them were already in pajamas, sticky from ice cream she'd given them as a treat. "You have a good night?" she asked, eyes twinkling. "The best," Ava said. "Good. You deserve good things." Back at the apartment, they got the kids settled. Brooklyn wanted 3 stories. Mason wanted his specific blanket that had somehow ended up in the laundry. By the time both kids were down, it was after 9. Caleb found Ava on the couch, staring at nothing. "What are you thinking about?" "How different everything is from a year ago. How I was alone and barely making it and convinced that was just how life was going to be. And now? Now I'm not alone. And I'm not just making it, I'm actually building something. We're building something. Yeah, we are." She turned to look at him. "Don't mess this up, okay? I know that's not fair to say, but I'm saying it anyway. Don't mess this up." "I'll try not to." "Good. Because I really think this could be it. Like, the real thing. The thing that lasts." "No pressure or anything." She laughed. "Sorry, I'm being intense." "You're being honest. I like honest." "Even when it's scary?" "Especially then." They stayed up late talking about the future. About what they'd do with the money from the tech startup. About maybe finding a bigger apartment where both kids could have their own rooms. About whether they'd ever be in a position to actually save money instead of just surviving month to month. "I want to take Brooklyn somewhere," Caleb said. "Like, on an actual trip. She's never been outside North Carolina." "Where would you go?" "I don't know. Beach, maybe? Somewhere she can just be a kid without worrying about anything." "That sounds nice." "You and Mason could come. Make it a whole thing." Ava smiled. "A family vacation? Yeah, if you want." "I want." They fell asleep on the couch again, tangled together, while the city hummed outside and their kids slept peacefully in the next room. It wasn't perfect. Nothing about their lives was perfect. But it was theirs, and that was starting to feel like enough. The summer stretched out in a haze of work and kids and slowly building something that felt real. They had good days and bad days. Days when everything clicked and days when nothing worked. But they kept showing up, kept choosing each other, kept building. And somewhere in the middle of all that mess and chaos and imperfect beauty, Caleb realized he'd stopped waiting for it to fall apart. Stopped protecting himself from the inevitable end. Because maybe, just maybe, this thing they'd built from a wrong number and $40 and 2 people too stubborn to give up, maybe it was strong enough to last. He didn't know for sure. Nobody ever did. But he was willing to bet on it anyway. And that felt like progress. The silence that followed was the worst part. Not the fight itself, though that had been brutal enough. Not the things they'd said to each other in anger and fear, But the silence after Ava left, when Caleb sat alone in his apartment with Brooklyn asleep down the hall and his phone dark on the table, that was what gutted him. 3 days. That's how long it had been since she'd walked out. 72 hours of nothing. No texts, no calls, no Mason showing up on Monday or Thursday. Just silence and the growing realization that he'd destroyed the best thing in his life because he was too afraid to hold on to it. It had started with the Meridian payment falling through. Caleb had been working on their website for 6 weeks, a complete overhaul, custom features, the kind of project that could actually change things financially. They'd promised $8,000 on completion. He'd already put in over 100 hours. The launch was supposed to be Friday, payment on Monday. Except Monday came and the payment didn't. Tuesday morning, he got the email. The company had been acquired. New management was reviewing all vendor contracts. Everything was on hold indefinitely, including payments for work already completed. Caleb read it 3 times before he understood what it meant. $8,000. Gone. Just like that. He'd been counting on that money. Had already spent it in his head, rent for 2 months, Brooklyn's preschool tuition, fixing the transmission in his car that had been making concerning noises for weeks. He'd even thought about taking Ava and the kids somewhere for a weekend. Nothing fancy, just a cheap hotel with a pool where they could all pretend to be normal for 48 hours. All of it gone. Ava had been there when he got the email. She read over his shoulder, and he felt her go tense. "They can't do this," she said. "They just did." "No, look at the contract. You delivered the work. They owe you." "Ava, the company got acquired. New owners, new rules. The contract doesn't matter if they decide it doesn't matter. So fight them. We'll send a formal demand. Threaten legal action if we have to." "With what lawyer? What money? I can't afford to fight this." "You can't afford not to. That's $8,000. "You think I don't know that?" His voice came out sharper than he meant it. "You think I don't know exactly how screwed I am?" She pulled back slightly. "I'm just trying to help." "I don't need help. I need the money they owe me." "Then let's get it." "How, Ava? How exactly do we get it? You going to sue them? You going to hire a lawyer I can't afford and wait 6 months for a settlement that might not even come? Meanwhile, what do I do about rent? About Brooklyn's school? About the fact that I just spent 6 weeks working for free?" "We figure it out, like we always do." "There's nothing to figure out. I'm broke. Again. Just when I thought maybe I was actually getting somewhere, it all falls apart, because that's what always happens." Ava stood up. Her jaw was set in that way it got when she was trying not to show she was upset. "So what? You're just giving up? Taking whatever scraps they throw you and moving on? What choice do I have?" "You have the choice to fight. To not let people walk all over you just because standing up feels hard. Easy for you to say. You're not the one who's going to be short on rent in 2 weeks. Actually, I am. Or did you forget that my income is tied to yours? If you're not making money, neither am I." That stopped him. She was right, of course. Their finances had gotten so tangled up over the past few months that her survival depended on his. If he went under, she went under. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did." She was packing up her laptop, her movements jerky and angry. "You meant exactly that. You're scared, so you're shutting down, just like you did before." "That's not fair." "Isn't it? The second things get hard, you fold. You convince yourself it's pragmatic, that you're being realistic, but really you're just afraid. Afraid to fight, afraid to fail, afraid that if you actually try and it doesn't work out, you'll have to admit you're not strong enough." "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" She turned to face him fully. "I've been on my own since I was 18, Caleb. I fought for every single thing I have. And yeah, sometimes I lost. Sometimes I got knocked down so hard I thought I'd never get back up. But I kept fighting because the alternative was giving up, and I refused to do that. Not for me, and not for Mason. This isn't about giving up. This is about survival. No. Survival is what we've been doing for the past 4 months. Building something, making it work even when it was hard. This?" She gestured at the laptop, at the email still open on his screen. "This is you getting scared and running away." "I'm not running anywhere." "Really? Because it feels like you're already halfway out the door." Something cold settled in Caleb's chest. "What's that supposed to mean?" Ava's expression shifted. Not quite sadness, but close. It means I've seen this before. People who get close to something real and then sabotage it because they're too afraid it won't last. My foster parents did it. Mason's dad did it. And now you're doing it. That's not what this is. Then what is it? He didn't have an answer. Or maybe he did, but saying it out loud felt like admitting defeat. The truth was he was terrified. Terrified that this business they'd built would collapse. Terrified that he'd let Brooklyn down again. Terrified that the small, fragile thing between him and Ava would crumble under the weight of reality. I can't do this right now, he said. Can't do what? Talk to me? Let me help you? Any of it. I need to figure this out on my own. Ava laughed, but there was no humor in it. On your own, right, because that's worked out so well for you. Ava, no. You know what? Fine. You want to do this alone? Go ahead. I won't stand here and watch you destroy yourself. She slung her bag over her shoulder. Call me when you're ready to actually fight for something instead of just surviving it. She left. The door closed quietly behind her, which somehow made it worse. If she'd slammed it, if she'd yelled, he could have been angry. Instead, he just felt hollow. That was 3 days ago. Now Caleb sat in the same spot, staring at the same email, trying to figure out how he'd managed to lose $8,000 and the person he cared about most in the span of 5 minutes. Brooklyn had asked about Ava twice. Is Ava coming today? And when is Mason coming back? Caleb had made up excuses. She's busy. He's not feeling well. We'll see them soon. Brooklyn had accepted it with the easy faith of a 4-year-old, but he could see her starting to notice something was wrong. Mrs. Chen was less subtle. You and Ava have a fight? She asked on Wednesday when she came to collect Brooklyn. Something like that? You apologize? It's more complicated than that. She made a dismissive noise. It's never complicated. You hurt her. You say sorry. You scared. You tell her. You love her. You don't let her go. I don't... He stopped. Did he love Ava? He hadn't let himself think about it in those terms. Love felt too big, too dangerous. Mrs. Chen was watching him with those sharp eyes that saw everything. You think too much. Feel more. She left with Brooklyn, and Caleb was alone again. His phone buzzed. For a second, his heart jumped. Maybe it was Ava. But it was just a text from a potential client asking about rates. He typed out a response and went back to staring at nothing. The thing that killed him was that Ava had been right. About all of it. He was scared. He was shutting down. He was running away from the fight because some part of him believed he deserved to lose. That realization sat in his chest like a stone. Thursday came and went. No Ava. No Mason. Just Caleb and his laptop and the growing stack of bills he didn't know how to pay. Friday morning, he got another email from Meridian. We understand this situation is frustrating. We're prepared to offer $1,500 as a goodwill payment for the work completed. This is our final offer. $1,500. Out of $8,000. Less than 20 cents on the dollar. Caleb stared at the number. 2 weeks ago, he would have taken it, would have convinced himself it was better than nothing. But now, sitting in the silence Ava had left behind, all he could hear was her voice. You have the choice to fight. He opened a new email and started typing. Your offer of $1,500 is unacceptable. Per the contract signed on March 15th, Section 4.2, payment is due upon delivery of completed work. I delivered the website on schedule and to specification. The fact that your company was acquired does not void our agreement. I'm requesting full payment of $8,000 within 10 business days. If payment is not received, I will pursue legal action for breach of contract. I've attached a detailed log of all hours worked and deliverables completed. He attached Ava's meticulous documentation, every hour tracked, every deliverable noted, every email exchange proving he'd met every requirement. Then he copied a lawyer friend from college who owed him a favor and sometimes did pro bono work. His finger hovered over send. This could go badly. They could refuse, could drag it out, could make his life hell. Or it could work. He hit send. The response came 6 hours later. Upon review, we acknowledge our contractual obligation. Payment of $8,000 will be processed within 5 business days. Caleb read it 3 times. Then he read it again. They'd caved, completely. Just like that. He felt something crack open in his chest. Not quite joy, but close. Relief, maybe. Or vindication. Proof that fighting back actually worked sometimes. He grabbed his phone and pulled up Ava's number. Started typing a message, deleted it. Started again. What was he supposed to say? You were right? I'm sorry? I'm an idiot and I miss you. All of it felt inadequate. He set the phone down and made a decision. Brooklyn was with Mrs. Chen. He had 2 hours. That should be enough. Ava's building looked different in the afternoon light. Less run down, maybe? Or maybe Caleb was just seeing it through different eyes. He climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor and knocked on her door before he could talk himself out of it. She answered in sweatpants and one of Mason's stained t-shirts, her hair in a messy bun. Mason was visible behind her, playing with blocks on the living room floor. Caleb? Her voice was flat. Careful. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you. Now's not really a good time. I know. I'm sorry, but I need to say this, and if I don't say it now, I'm going to lose my nerve. She studied him for a long moment, then stepped aside. Mason, keep playing with your blocks, okay? Okay, Mama. Caleb followed her into the kitchen. It was cramped and the linoleum was peeling, but it was clean, organized. So completely Ava. So talk, she said, leaning against the counter with her arms crossed. You were right about everything. I was scared and I shut down and I pushed you away because it felt safer than risking failure. Okay. I fought them, Meridian. Sent them a formal demand with all the documentation you put together. They're paying the full $8,000. Something flickered across her face. That's good. It's more than good. It's... He stopped, trying to find the right words. I never would have done that without you. Without you showing me that fighting back was even an option. I spent so long just taking whatever people gave me, convinced that was all I deserved. You changed that. Caleb, let me finish. Please. He took a breath. I'm sorry. For shutting you out. For saying those things. For acting like you didn't have a stake in this when we both know you have the biggest stake of all. Not just financially, but, he gestured vaguely. You and Mason, what we've been building, I almost destroyed it because I was too much of a coward to fight for it. Ava was quiet. Her expression hadn't changed, but he could see something working behind her eyes. You really hurt me, she said finally. Not because you were scared. I get scared too, but because the second things got hard, you pushed me away. Made it clear you didn't trust me to help you. To be there for you. I know. I've spent my whole life with people who did that, who pulled away the moment I started to matter. I can't do it again. I won't do it again. Not even for you. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking for a chance to prove I can do better. How? How do I trust that the next time something goes wrong, you're not going to shut me out again? It was a fair question. One he didn't have a perfect answer for. I don't know, he admitted. I can't promise I won't get scared. I can't promise I'll always handle things the right way. But I can promise I'll try. I can promise that the next time I feel myself shutting down, I'll tell you. I'll let you in instead of pushing you away. That's a pretty big promise. I know, but I mean it. Mason appeared in the doorway, holding up a plastic dinosaur. Mama, look, T-Rex. I see, baby. That's a very good T-Rex. Where's Brooklyn? The question hit Caleb right in the chest. He looked at Ava. She's with Mrs. Chen, he said quietly. But she misses you, both of you. She keeps asking when you're coming back. Something in Ava's expression softened. I miss her too, and I miss you so much. These past 3 days have been... He stopped. I didn't realize how much you'd become part of my life until you weren't there anymore. Mason wandered over and tugged on Caleb's jeans. Up. Caleb looked at Ava for permission. She nodded. He picked up Mason, who immediately started showing him the T-Rex. This is Rex. He eats people. That's terrifying. I know. Mason said it with deep satisfaction. Ava was watching them, and Caleb could see the exact moment she made her decision. Her shoulders dropped slightly, her arms uncrossed. Okay, she said. Okay? Okay, I'll give you another chance, but we need rules. Anything. If you're struggling, you tell me. You don't hide it. You don't minimize it. You just tell me. Deal. And we make decisions together. About work, about money, about the kids, all of it. We're partners or we're nothing. I want to be partners. And if you push me away again, I'm done. I mean it, Caleb. I won't keep putting myself through this. I understand. She took a shaky breath. I was really mad at you. I know. You had every right to be. I still am, a little. That's fair. Mason squirmed to be put down. Caleb set him on the floor and he immediately ran back to his blocks. In the silence that followed, Caleb and Ava just looked at each other. I'm sorry, he said again. Really, truly sorry. I know. She closed the distance between them. And I'm sorry too, for the things I said, for leaving instead of staying to work it out. You needed space. I get that. Still, we both messed up. Yeah. She reached for his hand. He took it, and it felt like coming home. So what now? She asked. Now we try again. Better this time? Better how? I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. Together? Together. They stood there in her tiny kitchen, holding hands, while Mason played in the next room and the afternoon light slanted through the windows. It wasn't perfect. Nothing about it was perfect. But it was real, and that was enough. Caleb stayed for another hour. They didn't talk about work or money or any of the practical things they needed to sort out. They just existed in the same space, rebuilding the small intimacy that had gotten fractured. When he finally left, Ava walked him to the door. Tomorrow, she said, bring Brooklyn over. All four of us. We'll do something normal. Define normal. I don't know. Playground, pizza. Something that doesn't involve us fighting or freaking out. I can do that. Good. She kissed him. Quick and soft, but it still made his heart stutter. Now go get your daughter before Mrs. Chen adopts her. He walked back to his car feeling lighter than he had in days. The Meridian payment would clear next week. He and Ava were okay. Brooklyn would have Mason back. Everything was... His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Is this Caleb Hayes? A man's voice. Unfamiliar. Yeah, who's this? My name is Derek Townsend. I'm calling about Ava Reynolds. Every muscle in Caleb's body locked up. What about her? I'm her ex. Mason's father. The world tilted. Caleb gripped the phone tighter. What do you want? I want to talk to you about my son and about the situation you've put yourself in. I haven't put myself in any situation. Really? You're co-parenting a kid that isn't yours with a woman you barely know. You don't think that's a situation? How do you even know about me? I've been keeping tabs, making sure Mason's being taken care of, and what I'm seeing raises some concerns. You abandoned them. You have no right to... I have every right. I'm his father. Oh, on paper maybe, but you've never been there for him, never supported him, never even met him. That's about to change. Caleb's blood went cold. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm back in Charlotte, and I'm planning to petition for custody. I've got a stable job now, a house. I'm in a position to provide for my son in a way Ava can't, in a way you definitely can't. You can't just show up after almost 2 years and take him. Actually, I can. North Carolina law favors biological parents. And when the court sees that Ava's living in poverty, working gig jobs, relying on some broke freelancer to help raise my kid, well, I think they'll see my side of things. Ava's a good mother. I'm sure she is. But good intentions don't pay the bills. My lawyer will be in touch. He paused. Do yourself a favor and stay out of this. You're in over your head. The line went dead. Caleb stood there in the parking lot, phone still pressed to his ear, trying to process what had just happened. Derek, Mason's father, the man who'd blocked Ava when she told him she was pregnant. He was back. And he wanted Mason. He needed to tell Ava, needed to warn her. But the thought of watching her face when she heard this, watching everything they'd just rebuilt shatter again, made him want to throw up. He got in his car and drove. Not home, just drove. Through Charlotte streets as the sun set, trying to figure out what to do. By the time he pulled up to his building, he'd made a decision. He was going to tell Ava. Tonight. They'd said no more hiding, no more shutting each other out. That meant this too, no matter how much it hurt. He was halfway to his apartment when he saw her, sitting on the steps outside his building, Mason asleep in her arms. "Ava, what are you doing here?" She looked up, and he could see she'd been crying. "He called me. Derek. About 20 minutes ago." Caleb sat down next to her. "He called me too. He wants Mason." "I know. He said he's going to fight for custody, that he has money now and a house and he can prove I'm unfit." "You're not unfit. I live in a shitty apartment and work for delivery apps and can barely afford daycare. A court might disagree with you." "Then we'll fight him." "With what, Caleb? What lawyer? What money? You just had $8,000 almost disappear. I'm one bad week away from being evicted. We can't fight someone who actually has resources." "So we get resources. How?" He didn't have an answer, at least not one that made sense, but he was done running, done folding, done letting fear make his decisions. "I don't know yet," he admitted, "but we'll figure it out, together. He's going to take my son." Her voice broke on the last word. Caleb pulled her close, careful not to wake Mason. She collapsed against him, and he felt her start to shake with silent sobs. "No, he's not," Caleb said quietly. "I won't let that happen." "You can't stop it." "Watch me." She pulled back to look at him. Her face was wrecked, eyes red, makeup smeared, every wall she usually kept up completely demolished. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "This isn't your fight." "Yes, it is. Mason's part of Brooklyn's life now, part of my life. And you—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "You're everything. So yeah, this is my fight, whether you want it to be or not." "I can't ask you to, but—" "You're not asking. I'm offering, same as I've been doing since that first text message." Something shifted in her expression. Not quite hope, but the beginning of it. "What if we lose?" "Then we lose fighting, together, the way we should have been doing all along." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat there on the steps while the street lights flickered on and Mason slept between them, completely unaware that his entire world was about to become a battlefield. "I'm scared," Ava whispered. "Me too." "But we fight anyway?" "We fight anyway." She took a shaky breath and nodded. "Okay, then let's fight." The lawyer's office smelled like old coffee and stress. Caleb sat next to Ava in chairs that were trying too hard to look expensive, watching her twist her hands in her lap while they waited. Mason was with Mrs. Chen. Brooklyn was at preschool. It was just the two of them and a problem that felt too big to solve. Jennifer Kwan came out to greet them herself, mid-40s, sharp suit, the kind of handshake that meant business. Caleb's college friend had made the introduction, calling in every favor he had to get them this meeting. "Come on back," she said, leading them to a small conference room. "I've reviewed the basics. Derek Townsend filed a petition for custody 3 days ago. Claims he's established stable housing and employment, wants to exercise his parental rights." "He abandoned us," Ava said. Her voice was steady, but Caleb could hear the tremor underneath. "He blocked me when I told him I was pregnant, never paid a cent of child support, never even met Mason." "I know, and that works in our favor. But North Carolina law does give biological parents significant rights, especially if they can demonstrate they're now in a position to provide care." "What does that mean for us?" Caleb asked. Jennifer looked at him carefully. "You're not Mason's legal guardian. From a court perspective, you're Ava's boyfriend who helps with childcare. That's nice, but it doesn't carry legal weight. So I'm useless here." "I didn't say that. Your presence shows stability, a support system. But ultimately, this comes down to Ava's fitness as a parent versus Derek's petition." "I'm fit," Ava said. "I've been raising Mason alone for almost 2 years. He's healthy, happy, loved. I believe you. But Derek's lawyer is going to argue that you're financially unstable, that you live in substandard housing, that you work irregular hours doing gig economy jobs. They'll paint a picture of a struggling single mother who can't provide the same opportunities Derek can." "Us, that's bullshit," Caleb said. "Maybe, but it's effective bullshit." Jennifer opened a folder. "Here's what we need to do. First, we document everything. Every interaction you've had with Mason, every expense you've covered, every decision you've made in his best interest. We build a timeline that shows you've been the only parent who mattered." "Okay." "Second, we address the financial stability issue. You're working with Caleb now, right? That's more stable income than delivery apps. We emphasize that. Show growth, trajectory. Make it clear you're building something. Our income is still not, Ava stopped. It's not great. It doesn't have to be great. It just has to be stable and sufficient. Can you show you're meeting Mason's needs? Yes. Then we work with that. Jennifer looked at Caleb. Your role here is to demonstrate that Mason has a stable home environment with consistent caregivers. You're not trying to be his father. You're showing that Ava isn't doing this alone. I can do that. Good. Because Derek's going to argue that Ava relies on transient romantic relationships for support. We counter that this is a committed partnership, not a fling. How long have you two been together? Caleb and Ava looked at each other. 4 months, Ava said. Maybe 5 if you count. It's complicated. Uncomplicated. Give me a clear timeline. When you met, when you started working together, when it became romantic. I need to present this as stable and serious. They spent the next hour going through everything. Jennifer took notes, asked pointed questions, built a picture of their relationship that was both accurate and strategic. By the time they left, Caleb's head was spinning. That was intense, he said, once they were back in his car. She's expensive. Ava was staring out the window. Even with your friend's discount, we're looking at $5,000 minimum, maybe more if this goes to trial. We'll figure it out. With what money, Caleb? The Meridian payment is going to rent and bills. We're already stretched thin. So we get more work, we hustle, we do whatever it takes. And if it's not enough? He reached over and took her hand. Then we try anyway. What else are we going to do? She didn't answer, just squeezed his hand and kept staring out the window. The next week was a blur. Caleb took every client project he could find, even the small ones that barely paid. Ava organized everything with the kind of precision that came from desperation, tracking hours, managing invoices, following up on every outstanding payment. They worked late into the night after the kids were asleep. Brooklyn and Mason sharing Caleb's bed while the adults ground through spreadsheets and proposals at the kitchen table. Mrs. Chen noticed. "You working too hard," she told Caleb one evening when she brought Brooklyn back from her apartment. "Need to rest too." "Can't. We have to—" He stopped. She didn't know about Derek. Nobody did except Jennifer. "Have to what?" "Just a big project. It'll settle down soon." She gave him a look that said she didn't believe him but wouldn't push. "You take care of yourself, and Ava, and those babies. Nothing else matters." "Yes, ma'am." The custody hearing was set for 6 weeks out. Jennifer said that was actually good. Gave them time to build their case, document everything, show stability. But 6 weeks felt like forever and no time at all. Derek's lawyer sent discovery requests. They wanted financial records, employment history, documentation of Ava's living situation. They wanted character references. They wanted everything. "They're trying to bury us in paperwork," Ava said, staring at the stack of requests. "Make it too expensive to fight. Then we do the paperwork ourselves. We don't need to pay Jennifer for stuff we can handle. You know how to respond to legal discovery?" "No, but I can learn. We've learned everything else, right?" They spent 3 days drafting responses. Jennifer reviewed them, made corrections, charged them half her normal rate because she could see they were trying. The final packet went out on a Friday, and for the first time in weeks, Caleb felt like they'd won something. Small, but still a win. Then Derek showed up at Ava's apartment. She called Caleb at 9 p.m., her voice shaking. "He's here." "Derek." "He's at my door asking to see Mason." "Don't let him in." "I'm not." "But he won't leave. He says he has a right to see his son." "Call the police." "You have a custody dispute active. He can't just show up." "If I call the cops, he'll say I'm keeping Mason from him. Use it against me in court." "Ava, he doesn't get to intimidate you. Call them. I'm on my way." He grabbed Brooklyn from bed, threw her coat over her pajamas, and drove to Ava's place faster than was probably legal. By the time he got there, a police cruiser was already parked outside. The officer was talking to Derek on the sidewalk. Ava was standing in her doorway, arms wrapped around herself. Caleb parked and got out, leaving Brooklyn asleep in the back seat. "What's going on?" "Are you Caleb Hayes?" the officer asked. "Yeah." "And you are?" He turned to Derek. "Derek Townsend. I'm Mason Reynolds' biological father. I'm here to see my son." The officer looked tired. "Sir, as I explained, there's an active custody petition. You can't just show up and demand access. You need to go through the proper channels. I have every right to see my kid. Not without a court order, you don't. Now I'm asking you to leave before this becomes a trespassing issue. Derek looked at Ava. This isn't over. You can't keep my son from me forever. I'm not keeping him from you. You kept yourself from him for 2 years. Don't pretend you suddenly care. I've always cared. I just wasn't ready. And I was. You think I was ready? I was 23 and terrified, and you blocked my number. I made mistakes. I'm trying to fix them. By threatening to take my child. That's not fixing anything. That's just being cruel. Derek's jaw tightened. He looked at Caleb. This is your fault. You got in her head, made her think she could keep Mason from me. I didn't make her think anything. I just helped her see she didn't have to deal with your bullshit alone. We'll see what the court says about that. The officer stepped between them. Okay, that's enough. Mr. Townsend, you need to leave. Now. Derek stared at Ava for another long moment, then walked to his car, a new BMW that probably cost more than Caleb made in a year. He drove off without looking back. The officer took statements from both of them, gave Ava a case number, suggested she document everything. After he left, Caleb and Ava stood on the sidewalk in the November cold, both shaking for different reasons. He looked different, Ava said quietly, like he actually got his life together. That doesn't give him the right to Mason. What if the court thinks it does? Then we fight harder. She turned to him. I'm so tired of fighting. I know. I just want to raise my son in peace. Is that too much to ask? No, it's not. He pulled her close. She was crying now, silent tears that soaked into his shirt. We're going to get through this. You don't know that. No, but I believe it anyway. They stood there until Brooklyn woke up and called for him from the car. Then they went inside, got Mason from where he'd been sleeping through everything, and sat together on Ava's couch like survivors of something they couldn't quite name. The next morning, Jennifer called. I heard about last night. That was stupid of him. How did you? I have contacts at the police department. They flagged it for me. She sounded almost pleased. He showed up uninvited, after hours, trying to force access to a child he's never met. That's not good for his case. So it helps us? It shows poor judgment, demonstrates that his sudden interest in fatherhood might be more about control than genuine care. We'll use it. Good. But Caleb, and I'm saying this as your lawyer, you need to stay calm around him. No confrontations, no arguments. Derek's going to try to provoke you because if you snap, he can paint you as unstable, as a bad influence on Mason. I didn't start anything last night. I know, just keep it that way. The weeks crawled by. Caleb and Ava worked, took care of the kids, tried to act normal even though nothing felt normal. Brooklyn asked why Mason's other daddy was mad at them. They told her it was complicated, which was the truth, if not a satisfying answer. Money got tighter, the legal fees added up. Caleb had to choose between fixing his car and paying Jennifer's retainer. The car lost. He started taking the bus to client meetings, which added hours to his day but couldn't be helped. Ava stopped sleeping. He could see it in her face, the exhaustion settling into her bones. She'd be up at 2 a.m. working, at 6 a.m. with Mason, all day managing their business, then back up at midnight doing more work because they needed every dollar they could scrape together. You're going to burn out, he told her one night. I'll rest when this is over. Ava, I can't lose him, Caleb. I can't. Mason is everything. If Derek takes him, her voice broke. I won't survive that. You're not going to lose him. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise I'll do everything in my power to make sure it doesn't happen. She looked at him with eyes that had seen too much disappointment to trust promises, but she nodded anyway. 3 days before the hearing, Jennifer called them in for prep. They spent 4 hours going over testimony, likely questions, how to stay calm under cross-examination. Derek's lawyer is going to go after your relationship, she warned. Suggest it's unstable. Imply that Caleb's just here for the short term. That's not true, Caleb said. Doesn't matter. They're going to say it. So Ava, when they ask about your relationship status, what do you say? That Caleb and I are partners, in business and in life. That he's been there for Mason in ways Derek never was. Good. And Caleb, when they ask why you're involved in a custody case for a child that isn't yours, He'd thought about this, rehearsed it in his head. Because Mason is part of my life, part of my daughter's life, and I care about him. I care about his mother. So yeah, I'm involved, because that's what you do for people who matter, Jennifer smiled. That's perfect. Don't overthink it. Just be honest. The hearing was in family court on a Tuesday morning. Caleb had to drop Brooklyn at preschool early. Mrs. Chen promised to pick her up after, keep her as long as needed. He met Ava outside the courthouse at 8:30. She looked like she might throw up. Hey, he said softly. You ready? No, but let's do it anyway. They went inside. The courtroom was smaller than Caleb expected, more like a conference room with a judge's bench. Derek was already there with his lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who looked like he ate small claims cases for breakfast. The judge was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses and an expression that gave nothing away. This is an initial custody hearing for Mason Reynolds. Mr. Townsend is petitioning for joint custody with a path toward primary custody. Miss Reynolds is opposing. Let's begin. Derek's lawyer went first. He painted a picture of a reformed man who'd made mistakes but was now stable and ready to be a father. Derek had a job in pharmaceutical sales making $60,000 a year. He'd bought a house in a good school district. He was engaged to a woman who worked as a teacher and wanted to help raise Mason. My client deeply regrets his initial response to Ms. Reynolds' pregnancy, the lawyer said. He was young and scared, but he's grown. He's ready, and he deserves the opportunity to be a father to his son. Then it was Jennifer's turn. She presented the timeline, every text message Ava had sent that Derek ignored, every month of child support he never paid, every milestone he missed. She showed documentation of Ava's care for Mason, medical records, daycare reports, everything that proved she'd been the only parent who mattered. Mr. Townsend claims he's ready to be a father, Jennifer said. But he's never met Mason. Has never changed a diaper, never stayed up all night with a sick toddler, never sacrificed anything for this child. Ms. Reynolds has done all of that, alone. And now that she's finally building something stable, Mr. Townsend wants to disrupt it. Not because Mason needs him, but because Mr. Townsend needs to feel like he's doing the right thing. The judge listened to both sides, took notes, asked occasional questions. Then she called Ava to testify. Derek's lawyer was brutal. He went after her finances, her housing, her work history, asked why she thought gig economy jobs were sufficient to support a child, asked about her relationship with Caleb and how long she thought it would last. You've known Mr. Hayes for what, 5 months? He asked. Almost 6. And you're already relying on him to help raise your son? I'm not relying on him. We're partners. Partners in what sense? In every sense. We work together. We support each other. We care for each other's children. Isn't it true that your business relationship only exists because you needed money? It exists because we work well together, because we both needed stability and we built it together. And when that stability ends, when Mr. Hayes moves on, what happens to Mason then? Jennifer objected. The judge sustained it, but the damage was done. Caleb could see Ava's hands shaking. Then it was his turn. Derek's lawyer went after him too, asked about his income, his own failed relationship, his qualifications to help parent a child that wasn't his. Why are you here, Mr. Hayes? Because I care about Mason, and I care about Ava. You care enough to insert yourself into a custody dispute? I care enough to support someone I love through a difficult time. Yeah. You love Ms. Reynolds? Caleb looked at Ava. She was watching him, eyes wide. They'd never said those words to each other, had danced around them, implied them, but never actually said them. Yeah, he said. I do. And you think that love is going to last? I think we're going to try our hardest to make it last. That's all anyone can promise. But you can't guarantee it. No, nobody can guarantee any relationship, but I can guarantee that I'm not going anywhere. That Mason has been part of my life for months now, and he's going to stay part of my life. Because that's what commitment means. The lawyer looked like he wanted to push further, but Jennifer objected and the judge moved on. Derek testified last. He was polished, rehearsed, talked about his regrets, his growth, his desire to be a real father. He was convincing. Caleb could see the judge listening carefully. I know I made mistakes, Derek said. Big ones. But I've changed. I have a stable life now. I can give Mason opportunities Ava can't. Private school, a yard. 2 parents who are committed to raising him right. You've never met your son, Jennifer said during cross-examination. Is that correct? That's correct. Never held him? Never fed him? Never comforted him when he was crying? No. So when you say you can give him 2 parents, you mean you and your fiancée, a woman he's also never met, versus the mother who's raised him alone for nearly 2 years and the man who's been helping care for him for the past 6 months? I mean, I can provide a traditional family structure. Mason already has a family structure, one that's been working just fine without you. The hearing ended around 3 p.m. The judge said she'd review everything and issue a ruling within 2 weeks. They walked out into the cold afternoon, none of them sure what had just happened. How do you think it went? Ava asked Jennifer. Hard to say. Judge Reeves is tough to read, but I think we made a strong case. What are our chances? Honestly, 50-50, maybe 60-40 in our favor. Derek showed up late to parenthood, but he showed up. Some judges value that. So we just wait? We wait. Caleb drove Ava back to her apartment. They picked up Mason from Mrs. Chen, who'd been watching both kids. Brooklyn was full of stories about her day. Mason was cranky for missing his nap. It all felt surreal against the weight of what they'd just been through. That night, after the kids were asleep, Ava turned to Caleb. They were on her couch, exhausted and wrung out. Did you mean it? She asked. Mean what? What you said in court? That you loved me? Caleb's heart started beating faster. Yeah, I meant it. We've never said that before. I know. Didn't seem like the right time until the lawyer forced it out of me. She laughed, but her eyes were wet. I love you too. Just so you know. Yeah? Yeah, I didn't want to. Scared the hell out of me, actually. But somewhere between that first coffee and now, it happened. He kissed her. Slow and soft and full of everything they'd been too afraid to say. When they pulled apart, she was crying for real. What if we lose? She whispered. We won't. But what if we do? Then we appeal. We fight. We keep fighting until there's nothing left to fight with. And even then, we don't give up. Because that's what love means. It means not walking away. She buried her face in his shoulder and cried like she'd been holding it in for months. Maybe she had been. Caleb just held her and let her fall apart. Because that's what she needed, and he was finally learning to give people what they needed instead of what he thought they wanted. The 2 weeks were torture. Every day felt like waiting for test results that could change everything. Ava barely ate. Caleb worked to keep his mind occupied. They kept up the routine with the kids, trying to pretend everything was normal. Brooklyn asked why everyone was sad. They told her they were just tired. She didn't buy it, but didn't push. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. Jennifer's number lit up Caleb's phone. He and Ava were both at his apartment. He put it on speaker. The ruling came down, Jennifer said. Ava grabbed his hand so hard it hurt. Judge Reeves denied Derek's petition for custody. Full decision is being filed, but the summary is that Derek failed to demonstrate sufficient prior involvement in Mason's life to warrant disrupting his current stable environment. Ava made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. She's granting him supervised visitation rights, Jennifer continued. 2 hours every other Saturday at a family visitation center. He can petition for expanded access after 6 months if he demonstrates consistency. So he still gets to see Mason? Ava asked. Limited visitation, yes, but you retain full custody. He has no say in major decisions. He's essentially a visitor, not a parent. Can he appeal? He can. But given the ruling, I doubt he will. Judge Reeves was pretty clear in her reasoning. She basically said that showing up with money doesn't erase 2 years of absence. They thanked Jennifer and hung up. For a long moment, they just sat there in silence. Then Ava started crying. Real, ugly, relieved crying that shook her whole body. Caleb pulled her close and she clung to him like he was the only solid thing in the world. We won, she gasped out. We actually won. Yeah, we did. I can keep him. You were always going to keep him. He's yours. And Derek gets supervised visits, which he'll probably do for a few weeks and then get bored with. You know how guys like that are. The idea of being a dad is more appealing than the reality. She pulled back to look at him. Her face was blotchy and wet, and beautiful. Thank you. For everything, for fighting with me, for not giving up. I told you, I'm not going anywhere. I'm starting to believe that. Good, because it's true. They told the kids that night. Brooklyn didn't really understand, but could tell everyone was happy. Mason was oblivious. They ordered pizza and ate it on the living room floor like it was a celebration, which it was. Mrs. Chen came by to drop off a container of soup she'd made. You look better, she told Ava. More light in your eyes. Things are better. Good. It's about time. Over the next few weeks, things started to settle. Derek showed up for his first supervised visit and spent 2 hours awkwardly trying to connect with a toddler who had no idea who he was. The second visit, he canceled. The third, he showed up 30 minutes late. By the fourth, the pattern was clear. He'd wanted to win the fight more than he'd wanted the responsibility that came with it. Ava stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop, started sleeping again, started believing that maybe, just maybe, things could actually be okay. The business grew. Caleb landed a contract with a local nonprofit that needed ongoing website maintenance, steady income, predictable hours. Ava expanded beyond just managing his work and started taking on other clients who needed administrative support. By December, they were making enough to both drop their side gigs entirely. Caleb's car finally died. Instead of scrambling to replace it, they decided to share Ava's. It meant coordinating schedules, but they'd gotten good at that. Plus, it saved money on insurance. We're becoming disgustingly practical, Ava said one morning as they figured out who needed the car when. I know. It's terrible. Next thing you know, we'll be meal planning. Let's not get crazy. Christmas came. They couldn't afford much, but they did it together. A small tree in Caleb's apartment. Stockings for all four of them. Brooklyn, Mason, Ava, Caleb. Mrs. Chen came over for dinner and brought enough food to feed a small army. Brooklyn got the art supplies she'd been wanting. Mason got blocks and toy cars. Ava got a new laptop bag because hers was falling apart. Caleb got a watch Ava had saved up for because his phone-as-clock system was ridiculous. They sat around the tree that night, kids playing with wrapping paper more than gifts. And Caleb thought about how much had changed in 10 months. How a wrong number text at 2 a.m. had turned into this. A family that didn't look like anything he'd imagined but felt more real than anything he'd ever had. What are you thinking about? Ava asked. Just how different everything is. Good different? The best different. She leaned into him. They were on the floor, backs against the couch, watching Brooklyn try to teach Mason how to draw. He was mostly eating the crayons, but she was patient with him. I never thought I'd have this, Ava said quietly. A partner. Someone who stayed. I never thought I'd trust anyone enough to let them in. But you did. But I did. He kissed the top of her head. Best stupid decision I ever made. Sending that $40? All of it. Every stupid, scary choice that led here. New Year's came and went. They stayed in, kids asleep by 9, watching the ball drop on TV with cheap champagne Mrs. Chen had bought them. Resolution? Ava asked as the countdown started. Keep doing this, whatever this is. That's not very ambitious. I don't need ambitious, I just need us. That's disgustingly sweet. I know. I'm full of surprises. The countdown hit 0. They kissed while the TV blared and fireworks went off somewhere in the distance, and 2 kids slept in the next room, completely unaware that their parents were building something that might actually last. In January, they signed a lease on a 2-bedroom apartment. Nothing fancy, still on the cheaper side of Charlotte, still in a building that had seen better days. But it had 2 bedrooms, which meant Brooklyn and Mason could each have their own space when they stayed over, which was becoming most nights anyway. Are we moving in together? Brooklyn asked when they told her. Kind of, Caleb said. We'll still have my old place for a while, but we'll spend more time at the new one. With Ava and Mason? Yeah. Good, I like them. Me too, Bug. Moving day was chaos. Mason cried because his routine was disrupted. Brooklyn was overstimulated and melted down twice. They forgot to label half the boxes, so nothing was where it was supposed to be. Mrs. Chen came by with food and moral support and the kind of calm that only came from surviving worse. By the end of the day, they were exhausted and sitting on the floor eating takeout because they couldn't find the dishes. But they were together, all 4 of them in a space that was actually theirs. This is insane, Ava said, looking around at the disaster of boxes and furniture. We've known each other less than a year and we're already living together. You want to slow down? No, that's the crazy part. I don't want to slow down at all. Good, because I don't either. Brooklyn appeared in the doorway, wearing pajamas and dragging her stuffed elephant. Daddy, I can't find my bed. It's in your new room, Bug. Come on, I'll show you. He set her up in the smaller bedroom, still bigger than what she'd had before. Mason's crib went in the other bedroom. The adults would take the living room couch that folded out until they could afford a real bed for the master bedroom. That night, after the kids were finally asleep and the apartment was quiet except for the unfamiliar sounds of a new place, Caleb and Ava lay on the fold-out couch and stared at the ceiling. We did it, she said. Did what? Built something. From nothing. From a wrong number and $40 and two people who didn't know how to trust anyone. We built this. Yeah, I guess we did. You guess? Okay, fine. We definitely did. We're basically domestic gods now. She laughed and rolled into him. I love you. You know that? I know. You told me in court, remember? That was you. Right. Well, I love you too, just so we're clear. Crystal clear. They fell asleep like that, tangled together on a too-small mattress in an apartment that smelled like paint and new beginnings, while their kids slept in rooms of their own and the city hummed outside their windows. The months that followed weren't perfect. Mason went through a hitting phase that drove everyone crazy. Brooklyn started kindergarten and struggled with the transition. Money was still tight. They still fought sometimes about stupid things like who forgot to buy milk or whose turn it was to do dishes. But they showed up. Every day, even the hard ones. Especially the hard ones. Ava's birthday came in March. Caleb couldn't afford anything big, so he made her dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad and a cake from a box mix that Brooklyn helped decorate. They ate by candlelight while the kids made a mess, and Mrs. Chen told stories about her youth in Taiwan. This is perfect, Ava said, looking around the table at all of them. Exactly what I wanted. Boxed cake and chaos? Family, this, us. Derek stopped showing up for visitation in February, just stopped coming. The visitation center called Ava to let her know. She felt relieved and sad at the same time. Relieved for Mason, sad that he'd been right about Derek from the start. Some people just aren't built for the long haul, she told Caleb that night. Good thing we are. You think? I know. By summer, they'd found their rhythm. Work was steady. The kids were growing. The apartment felt like home instead of just a place they slept. They had friends over, other parents from Brooklyn's school, a few of Caleb's clients who'd become actual friends, Mrs. Chen, who was basically family at this point. One Saturday in June, they all went to the park. Brooklyn was teaching Mason how to pump his legs on the swing. Mrs. Chen was reading on a bench. Caleb and Ava sat on a blanket watching it all. You remember that first day we met? Ava asked. At that coffee shop? You mean when you tried to pay me back $40 and I was too stubborn to take it? That's the one. Yeah, I remember. Did you think we'd end up here? Caleb watched Brooklyn catch Mason at the bottom of the slide, both of them laughing. Honestly, no, I thought maybe we'd work together for a few months and then drift apart. I didn't think... He gestured at everything. This. Me neither. I thought I'd pay you back and never see you again. That you'd just be some nice guy who helped me once. Instead, you got stuck with me. Best mistake I ever made. Texting the wrong number. All of it. Every stupid, scary choice that led here. She was echoing his words from New Year's, and they both smiled at the recognition. Brooklyn ran over, Mason toddling after her. Daddy, can we get ice cream? It's almost dinner time, Bug. But it's summer. Summer means ice cream. Caleb looked at Ava. She shrugged. Summer does traditionally mean ice cream. Fine, but you're all eating vegetables tomorrow. Deal. Brooklyn grabbed Mason's hand. Come on, we're getting ice cream. They walked to the ice cream shop 3 blocks away, Brooklyn and Mason leading the way with Mrs. Chen keeping watch. Caleb and Ava brought up the rear, hands linked, just existing in the moment. I'm happy, Ava said suddenly. Like actually happy. Not just surviving or coping or managing, actually happy. Yeah? Yeah, that's weird, right? I spent so long just trying to get through each day, I forgot what it felt like to actually enjoy one. It's not weird. It's good. It is good. She stopped walking, turned to face him. I want to marry you. Caleb's brain short-circuited. What? Not now. We don't have money for a wedding or anything, but someday. I want to marry you and make this official and stop pretending we're just dating when we're basically already married. Is this a proposal? I don't know. Maybe? I'm bad at this. You're terrible at this. So is that a yes, or... He kissed her. Right there on the sidewalk with their kids 20 feet ahead and Mrs. Chen pretending not to watch, and the whole world just continuing on around them. Yes, he said when they pulled apart. Someday, when we can afford it, when the time is right. Yes. She grinned and it transformed her whole face. Okay then. Okay then. They caught up to the kids at the ice cream shop. Brooklyn wanted chocolate. Mason wanted vanilla and immediately got it all over his face. Mrs. Chen got mango. Ava got strawberry. Caleb got mint chip. They ate their ice cream on a bench outside, watching people walk by, and Caleb thought about how none of this was what he'd planned. How he'd never imagined his life would look like this, sharing custody of someone else's kid, living with a woman he met through a wrong number, building a business out of desperation and stubbornness. But it was better than anything he could have planned. Messier, harder, more complicated, but real in a way his old life never was. Brooklyn finished her ice cream and immediately asked for more. Caleb said no. She pouted for about 30 seconds before getting distracted by a dog walking past. Mason fell asleep on the walk home, ice cream sticky and exhausted. Ava carried him while Caleb carried their empty cups and Brooklyn's hand. Mrs. Chen waved goodbye at her building. See you tomorrow, she called. See you tomorrow, they called back. At their apartment, they got the kids cleaned up and into bed. Brooklyn required 2 stories and 3 glasses of water. Mason went down easy, thumb in his mouth, completely wiped out. Caleb and Ava collapsed on the couch, the kind of tired that came from a full day but felt good instead of draining. So we're getting married someday, Ava said. Apparently. Brooklyn's going to lose her mind. She's been asking when we're getting married for months. How does she even know about marriage? One of her friend's parents got married. Now she thinks everyone should. Makes sense. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Ava said, Thank you. For what? For answering that text. For sending the money. For showing up. For staying. For all of it. You already thanked me for that. Like 100 times. I know. But I mean it every time. Caleb pulled her close. She fit against him perfectly, like they'd been designed to do this. I should be thanking you. Before you, I was just existing, going through the motions. You made me want to actually try. We're good for each other. Yeah, we really are. His phone buzzed. A text from a new potential client asking about his rates. He'd answer it tomorrow. Tonight was for this, the quiet after the chaos, the peace that came from knowing they'd built something that would last. Hey, Caleb? Ava said sleepily. Yeah? If someone had told me a year ago that a wrong number text would change my entire life, I would have thought they were crazy. Me too. But I'm glad it did. Change my life, I mean. I'm glad it was you on the other end. Me too. She fell asleep against him like that, and Caleb stayed awake a little longer, just thinking. About how far they'd come. About everything they'd survived. About the family they'd built from desperation and hope and $40 sent at 2 a.m. It wasn't perfect. It was never going to be perfect. But it was theirs, and that was enough. Outside, Charlotte hummed with its usual noise. Traffic and sirens and people living their lives. Inside, 2 kids slept peacefully while 2 adults who'd started as strangers held on to each other and the life they'd made. Caleb's last thought before sleep took him was that he'd never expected happiness to look like this. Complicated and messy and real. But he'd take this version over any perfect fantasy any day of the week, because this was what mattered. Not perfection, just presence. Showing up every day and choosing each other over and over again until one day you looked around and realized you'd built something worth keeping. And that was exactly what they'd done.